Hello everyone. So as you may have seen, I've released all of these videos again, and yeah, the reason they were put back on YouTube is complicated, but they're all here now, and I thought, considering these five novels, well, or the one in five or five in one, whatever you would like to look at it as, these were the whole thing was just one massive achievement, and at the moment I'm currently rebooting it into a new thing, something far more engaging. But yeah, this novel took since let's see, yeah, and it was, I would say like some of the ideas were coming up about 2017, and then the final idea was started to but yeah, I remember from 2019 and on and up until 2022. I just remember one idea going from the next, and then after I finished my education, all of the notes I was going through, and I thought, oh wow, I've actually created a well-structured story. And if I remember to put it on the screen, so there's a review, or a couple actually, stating that these are rather good to read and that. So yeah, that's rather good. But yeah, I can't get into publishing due to all sorts of reasons. But I've got a new hobby. Yeah, I won't be doing any more novels, but at least we can showcase this lot. So what we're going to do is that I'll let it play throughout, and yeah, there will be a couple of wording errors. Yeah, never mind. But yeah, so we're gonna go back and forth between this narrating and me just talking about it each segment. So if you know they were reviewed well, despite not many reviews, let's find out, possibly why. What did I manage to achieve? And yeah, as you can see, I've carried over the 8-bit pixelated style in it to help visualize the story a bit. Um, but yeah, let's just get to playing, shall we?
Tilda Chapter 1 An Introduction to a Clan. Earth is a funny planet, isn't it? Imagine this world but in the future, where
Okay, so right here, so you already got a couple of clues. So yeah, there's going to be a team involved, and it's set in on Earth in the future. So yeah, and later on you do get some more details. What the technology is like, what the pole of Earth is like, just on a basic level. Um, yeah, just like giving you basics, because you don't want the whole shebang, because otherwise there's no mystery, or it will just like really bog down the pacing. But because other than the normal bits and bobs, you're like, oh, an alien team, what's that all about? So it gives you that kind of hint. So yeah, let's continue.
technology has advanced as well as an alien team being formed on Earth. The latter sounds odd, doesn't it? This is an Earth that has reverted to Pangaea. Most of
And yeah, that is playing on a theory I've heard once, and I think the whole Pangea stuff I probably would have liked to lean more towards, because at the moment, like, the main function is um or the main reason for it being Pangea is because in the first book, it's like a simple trip throughout Earth, and yeah, and there's a couple of, well, one city and one town that's definitely made up, and we could assume conversion happened, like one or two cities came together, but it's only land coming together, not shrinking at the same time. Yeah, it's not doing that. But yeah, but as when I reboot it, there will be a whole heap of ideas carrying over, and I think Pangea as well. One thing I would definitely like to expand upon, because I do find it quite interesting, Pangea. Yeah, so something I like to research more. Anyway, let's go.
the land is one, and humanity still lives as one, with a singular base protecting the whole land, with only one political group overseeing the
I think the whole singular base thing isn't the smart idea. Like, I think what I was trying to go for was like one massive base to oversee the whole of Earth now, all of their lands together. But I think nowadays that's not very practical, and I think that I should consider more in the reboot as well. Because yeah, I have made a small start in it, but yeah, with the mini load of animations I've been making, but yeah, it's not very practical nowadays. I guess I was just trying to be simple, and I didn't know what to do with extra bases, but never mind. And it looks like if I no, not gonna have the laser up just in case, um, but yeah, it looks like there's a president and a political group that oversees the entire planet, which too is a bit impractical as well. Once again, it is just making things simpler, but yeah, not the best idea.
Whole
Anyway,
world, with a president ruling the whole world too. The world does have your average level of crime and still has a variety of lands from forests, mountains, and even the Arctic is still there. But back to the team, they are called the Haphazard Legion.
yeah, there has been a couple of updates I've heard about with the Arctic managing to maintain occasionally, and there's been some scientific breakthroughs of how to get the Arctic, like bring the ice back again. So that's the kind of angle I was going for, but at the same time, I wanted to be a bit more positive, being like, oh, we do manage to, rotate the Arctic. Because, yeah, Earth does go through a whole load of bits and bobs, but just because of the alien stuff, that's it.
Led by a human, Captain Nicole, but following her is a Morphil and an Everlone, called Pod and Arvin. Nicole is a
And yes, it's one of those cases where the races match the names. So yeah, Pod's the Morphil and Arvin's the Everlone. Yeah, there's a small adjustment I made with, because as you find out later on, Arvin is a temporary evolution kind of being, but that I've updated. Probably won't go into it because I don't want to go too deep into my reboot just in case. But yeah, now we've got still a couple of basics of Earth. Now we're going to be introduced to the specific members of the team, or the team at this point. So yeah, who are these members?
late 30s brunette who wears a type of green uniform, light with knee pads, elbow pads, and well armored. Pod is a humanoid.
And as you can see, this is a novel that does not have any dialogue. It's just all description. And yeah, one key thing was to describe the characters properly in detail. And so yeah, just get a whole load of bits and bobs. Even a Colby in late 30s and a captain, is that? Yeah, I think I can see they being plausible. She's at an age where she's quite sensible and wary, etc. And yeah, and you also get hints of their abilities as well later on as well, which will be exciting.
Killer whale who wears a repainted suit that is flexible and soft yet also can absorb damage well, made up of cyan and has some similar pattern features of a diving suit. Arvin on the other hand doesn't wear anything.
The whole redesign of Pod's suit hasn't really been brought up again, because I think it's the same kind of armor he wore in the race he was a part of, or the clan he used to be a part of. But yeah, I think that would have been quite interesting to delve deeper into how and why he did it. Well, I think the why part is easy to grasp when you go further into the story, but yeah, I think it should have been brought up more anyway.
He bears soft fur, which is a nice dark brown, looking like a pine marten, and also doesn't speak. They are about to fight some flamos, basically, dragons but human-sized with dark blue skin and genes, wandering around the hills of the earth.
Flamos, amongst other alien races I have either redesigned or scrapped, because something I was thinking about is that when you look at a lot of fiction, a lot of it comes from existing mythology, etc., including dragons. And I remember thinking, because a lot of my alien designs do come from features from Earth creatures, but that I'm going to make more of a point of just showing how designs carry over throughout. But other than like maybe a couple of similarities, I barely reference mythology, and I don't intend to. So yeah, I don't think there'll be any dragons. If anything, there is like one grander character who has like a dragon design, but and that's how far I go. And yeah, and with races like the Flamos, sometimes they're like cool to make up at first glance, but then when you like try and think of, like, I've had a couple of ideas, like making them more have an airborne race and maybe live in the tree houses, but sometimes your head's like, or not like invested enough to expand on it, and so yeah, by cutting the number of races, it does help bring more ideas together to then make the races I'm keeping, more blade and such. And as for the design, the colours are okay. And I suppose they would have to fight with their feet alongside breathing fire as well. And oh yeah, by the way, the images. So yeah, Nicole does have a riot shield, and she's firing a laser at one of them. And I feel like the explosive should be behind the laser, actually. Never mind. And then Arvin on the left, he has one of his semi-evolving features, probably a tentacle, a lime green one. Throwing one of the flavors about. And Pun looks like he's just grabbed hold of one. Oh, yeah, by the way, yeah, this is extremely similar to the storybook. Basically, the novel is, the storybook videos, but just far more improved than that. Probably far more entertaining too. Anyway, let's go.
Trying to find something for who hired them, we will meet him very soon. But the Legion has seen the Flamos, and as normal, they will fight them and then aim to confront them, try and get answers from them. They are within a spare area of Earth.
Yeah, so this is not just an introduction. There's a bit more of a purpose and a pattern to it, which is expanded later on. Like you can just have normal introductions that just like normal everyday stuff, and they can be a lot of fun. But sometimes you could do what I've done, where like yes, it's in an introductory scene, but it does lean onto like just more dots to connect, and so yeah, and also when you can see the likes of no witnesses and hills, so that's me accounting for why nobody else sees this. It's a bit risky, and not to mention the following book has the case of the Haphazard Legion has been revealed to the public, and but at the same time you're just like wait, how? And I feel like this team hasn't been around for too long, but like probably less than a year, so that's the impression I try and give. And not to mention every book is almost like a couple of days in between, because it'd be really tricky to fill the gaps. But so yeah, and you also get a description of the current setting as well, so you're like, oh, okay, so that's what the battle looks like. And yeah, not to mention, yeah, quick thing, fight scenes I found the hardest to write. Somehow I found like the conversations the most fun, and I think it's just because it's not only hitting the story structure or the character arc template, the one I like, but it's like like even if I'm writing the characters, I feel like I'm learning more about them as I improve them. So yeah, it's just these like and all of these personalities are once again it's going to carry over to the to the reboot as well. So yeah, that'll be fun. Let's go.
No witnesses, a nice wide field with massive hills all around, with a tree now and again, with a
It's also worth noting that I might have said this before in the commentaries for these particular animations, but I've thanks to my new animations that'll be coming out soon, it's the right amount of detail, making it the environments lively enough. But there's been cases where I make the environments too detailed and therefore makes it harder to see the characters. But I managed to find a rather good balance, but as you can see, there's images like this, which is like far too bland. Like it's just the foreground, background, and I like to see the beach snippet, and that's meant to be the base on the left, on the top left somewhere. But yeah, that could look so much better. Maybe if it has like balls and trees, why not have them? What am I like? Anyway.
boulder here and there. As they fight, they take down their own flamos, and there are 7 of them. Nicole likes to keep her foes at a distance, shooting
Their own flamos, so that already hints, like in teamwork. And I thought I've said this before in numerous occasions in other commentaries, but I do. And dislike's too strong of a word, but when you encounter like a whole heap of films, etc., and you're like, oh, for goodness sake, it's the same theme again. But the key is that, like, yes, if a lot of themes are common, then how do you present that in your own way. And I feel like the premise of having a mixture of aliens being placed on Earth, and granted we have had that premise before, but it's like a slightly different tone, its own kind of tone somewhat. And so I think that helps with just make the theming and the presentation stand out more. And so as you can imagine, the point of this scene is that you can see how they're all fighting individually, but they're not working together. And it was like a bit of a, I guess, a bit weird conclusion looking back, where they're like, oh no, they're nearly failed because of the blackening teamwork. And yeah, granted, a couple of them do get into trouble, but I think it would actually be better to have more of a proper consequence, instead of being like, oh no, this nearly happened, because that's not really impactful enough. Yeah, I feel like
Tilda Chapter
if
1 An
something needs to be
Introduction to a
done, then it
Clan.
must be like
Earth is
a
a
high
funny
enough of
planet,
a
isn't it?
cost.
Imagine
Because
this
yeah,
world,
this
but
is
in the
really good
future,
writing
where
tip.
technology
Any
has advanced as
success
well as
must
an
come at a
alien team
cost,
being formed
to
on
help with
Earth.
the
The latter
momentum of
sounds
the
odd,
story.
doesn't it?
And I feel like
This is an
the
Earth that has
success
reverted
is
to
like, yes,
Pangaea.
they do
Most of the land is
succeed
one,
in fighting
and
the
humanity
flamers,
still
but and I
lives as
guess the
one,
cost
with a
is
singular base protecting the whole
just
land,
like for you
with
to
only one
downturn them,
political
therefore they
group
need to
overseeing the
reinvolve
whole world,
themselves more,
with a
but that
president
already
ruling the
sounds
whole
really
world
weak.
too. The world does have your
So
average
yeah,
level of
it's
crime and
probably not
still
the
has a
best start. I
variety
feel
of
like the
lands from
introductory parts
forests,
is always like the
mountains, and
trickiest
even the
part, or one of the
Arctic is
trickier
still
parts
there.
to write,
But
because you
back to
feel
the
like you only
team,
get
they
into
are
something
called the
once you're
Haphazard Legion, led
delve
by a
deeper
human,
into it.
Captain
But
Nicole, but
for
following her is
engaging
a
shows,
Morphil
it's
and an
been
Everlone,
done well
called
before.
Pod and
Look at Cobra
Arvin.
Kai episode
Nicole is
one.
a late
It
30s brunette
does
who
that
wears a type of green
in the
uniform,
introduction really
light
well.
with knee
Anyway,
pads, elbow pads, and well armored.
yeah, we do
Pod is a
get
humanoid killer whale who
some
wears a
detail of the
repainted suit
fighting,
that is flexible
and
and soft yet
as you can
also can
imagine,
absorb damage
because
well,
in the
made up of cyan
reboot
and
I
has
am
some
starting
similar
to
pattern
implement
features of a diving
orange, but
suit. Arvin, on the other hand,
back then,
doesn't wear
other than
anything.
a couple of
He
basic
bears soft
colours like
fur,
black or
which
grey
is
or
a nice
white,
dark brown, looking like a
the
pine
colour scheme
marten,
was just
and also
either a
doesn't
very
speak.
variety of blues
They
or
are about to
greens,
fight some
which did
flamers,
make it
basically,
quite nice.
dragons
But
but
yeah, I just feel like
human-sized
adding
with
orange
dark blue skin and jeans,
has helped
wandering
a
around the
couple
hills
of
of the earth,
occasions,
trying to
and
find
so yeah,
something
that's
for who
why
hired them.
blue
We
and
will
green
meet
is
him
like
very
a common
soon.
word.
But the Legion has seen the Flamos, and as normal, they will fight them and then aim to confront them, try and get answers from them. They are within a spare area of Earth, no witnesses, a nice
And another interesting thing about my universe is that, or fictional universe rather, is the depending on the kind of green or blue, it matches with um, a type of element. So yeah, the four elements is pretty much like the MacGuffins of the whole story, but pretty much every character ability, I think almost every time, but a lot of the abilities are matching with whatever elements, whether it's life, fire, ice, and water, or material. And so yeah, Nicole's with it being a dark blue laser, that comes from, I say the air element of some sort, because that part of that, it's not like in Avatar: The Last Airbender where it's very specific with the four elements. It's like that's like the traditional way, but I've gone for more of a an alternative approach, like the life energy, you could say, that has a lot of biological related things, and another one is like, yes, it has air, but it also has lightning and almost like basic energy. So yeah, what the Conan mentions the fire. So yeah, stun lasers are light blue, therefore it's like more zappy, and it won't be too light blue because of light blues already, like fire, ice, and water, and yes, fire is blue in this universe, even lava too. um, but yeah, Nicole was just firing a basic um, yeah, just like a bit of uh, like laser energy of some kind. Yes, a bit abstract, but I'll put up a guide as well. Yeah, here just to help you out.
wide field with massive hills all around, with a tree now and again, with a boulder here and there. As they fight, they take down their own flamos, and there are 7 of them. Nicole likes to keep her focus.
Yep, she can either throw them or shoot them, and yeah, I think yeah, whether it's throwing them or needing a longer distance, yeah, so there's already that variety and ability for what she can do, and so yeah, I don't know what else I was going to say. Yeah, let's continue.
At a distance, shooting at them using her stun-based laser, the opposite to her fatal laser.
And then yeah, we do explain how a right shield works. So look, I can't really say it's basic one because it does manage to withstand low defeat. The first aid thing does come up a couple of times, but not majorly. I guess it depends.
The former is light blue, but the latter is a darker blue, shooting a full beam from her rifle which is almost as round.
Withstand a missile? Oh my gosh, that must be like super OP. And not to mention, something I struggled to account for is that Nicole, Mike, and Retron, all of them are soldiers with their own, type of weapons, and yet you had the servicemen that all shared the same type of ones, but it just makes you wonder, why aren't they, all the same? Yeah, I think that I could quite, account for. Like the servicemen do have reflective armor, which makes them like well protected enough, but I just feel like everyone else should have like Nicole's shield, etc.
As a cannon. She does have other abilities at her disposal like a grenade launcher, which can also shoot concussions which can deter either human senses or technology.
And yeah, you can also, I say oh no, it is the line, sorry. But yeah, this sentence is like a first hint of, a power that's yet to come. So yeah, Pod is just like a normal melee fighter at this point, which does create quite an interesting approach, because when you look at each story, every character's abilities like grow in some way, especially main characters. I would say Zoe and Pod's vary the most, because yeah, Nicole's doesn't really change much, and Arvin does get a couple of new upgrades, but or gets updated rather. But yeah, I think that's the fun of this story, just working with it, seeing how these abilities work and such.
And first aid skills alongside a
Oh yeah, that was also like a really cool idea. I don't know how I thought of the design of Pod's Trident, because Trident's normally like a spear equivalent, but I think it was just one day when I was just drawing it, and I thought, like if I pour like, if the blade's like wide enough and has spikes on the edges, and if it's nice and wide and the handle's not too long and it suits the size of a big creature, then yeah, it's a I can see how that could be like a really good design. It's almost like an axe with a point at the top almost, but except it's a trident. So yeah, learn more about the trident later.
riot shield which she can summon on the dime. It is also strong enough to absorb a missile heading to her thanks to magnetic forces to deter the force. Pod, while seeing signs of fire, ice.
And then yeah, that just helps demonstrate how the weapon works. I think that I do explain from time to time, everyone's weaponry, or some of it.
And water activity around the trident.
But not to mention, some weapons like Pod's Trident does have a bit more importance throughout the story. So yeah, I think that explains why this weapon probably is explained more so than other weapons.
He is mainly an up-close fighter, not knowing his trident properly yet. He uses it like a spear and an axe at the same time. After all...
So yeah, Pod is definitely strong. I think with all the characters, how they withstand damage and how it's consistent. I think that's fine, because as you find out later on, Pod is able to like take punches from bad guys. So yeah, I think he can withstand a lot of the damage, and I think fire probably does very little. And if he already has like quite thicker skin, then yeah, I can see how he can withstand that.
The trident has a short handle, and the left and right pointers are not only curved but there are edges too, enabling swinging movements that can be effective. Pod as a Morphil is only very tough, able...
And then yeah, you do have a lot of explanations from time to time of the type of changes that Arvin can do. And I remember being worried about how many changes he can do, but a lot of them are just a variety of melee attacks, nothing too like too wacky. Because for instance, I don't think he definitely doesn't form wings or gills, and by not coming up with those over the top abilities, just helps prevent any plot holes, because I was quite cautious of them. But yeah, that's that part.
To withstand damage such as the fire breathed by the Flamos, and so he is up close when fighting his two Flamos.
I think Arvin being fast does come back a couple of times. Yeah, I just sort of realised that anyway.
Finally, Arvin can temporarily alter any of his body features, allowing him to have a variety of abilities.
So, oh yeah, so Nicole is the one trying to help with their teamwork, and not to mention, looking back at when talking about the success and costs kind of format, I think this is just mainly set up, and it's only when it pays off in one of the battles, when, like, spoilers, Nicole does suffer an injury, nothing too bad, but uh, yeah, you can see how it adds, a bit of a consequence. Not to mention, yeah, this book, the first one, is like extremely simple at a point where it's very easy to explain, the format and the structure and how everything pinpoints. How everything pinpoints, that's not quite right, sorry. Um, but yeah, yeah, it's just like carefully placed, as far as I can remember.
But as he is up close to his Flamos, he makes his claws larger, trying to swing at the Flamos while running around.
Effortlessly. So yeah, Pod is definitely an experienced fighter in some way, more so than the others. It did get more of that later on, especially when finding out how old he is. Uh, but yeah, just another thing.
As he makes his legs faster. All of them can fight well, but as said by Nicole numerous times, they are.
So yeah, Nicola tries to perform some teamwork despite the other two lacking. Um, So yeah, because what's interesting is that Nicole does have her own arc. Oh, yeah, I remember what it is, but the teamwork part she seems to be fine with. But it's not just whilst the others would need to like work on the whole practical teamworking side of things. As you find out later on, hers is just working on how she connects with them, on a emotional level almost. So yeah, like a couple of uh, bits and bobs of setup. And you get some kind of personality bits and bobs, like other thing that you find out later on, with Nicole being frustrated and such. So yeah, let's go.
Struggling to work together, so tied up with the foes they are fighting, so Nicole tries to help by firing a concussion grenade at one of.
Oh yeah, that's another thing the life element does. Unless I probably would have to explain it more in the reboot, but just life energy. We're talking about plants and animals. Like, yeah, it just makes you wonder what this green energy is and what it actually does. It could be almost like a toxic acid kind of approach, yeah, because fire burns, ice freezes, electricity zaps. So I think that's the best differentiation, yeah. Especially, sorry, I feel like I'm headcanoning my story, but I'll definitely count it the reboot, yeah, because yeah, the reboot I think will be better than this, despite being an achievement taking years.
Pod's Flamos, stalling him while Pod effortlessly takes down the others. Nicole uses her stun laser to shoot at Arvin's Flamos via the wings, allowing Arvin.
Yep, so that's a decent explanation there. Yeah, 'cause, yeah, like every word is like important. Where like just to try to actually do X, Y, or Z, or this, and this, and yeah. So the flavour is fine, but also when they nearly hit a Nicole kind of thing, yeah, it just looks like, yeah. I think this is definitely a newer team, as you can infer. Yeah, yeah, because as you find out later on, they've all kind of been on their own from time to time. So yeah, it's just like an example of struggling to account for one another.
A good shot as he charges his own body and unleashes green energy from his mouth, mildly burning the Flamo. There is now one more left, and Pod throws the trident at it, nearly hitting Nicole, shocking her, but the Flamo is stuck against.
Yep, and that definitely matches with what's set up later on. I guess as a spoiler, it's Zion Thor who oversees the lot, um, and yeah, and you do later find out. Well, and obviously it's referring to the elements, but at this point you're like, oh, energy, what type, but anything specific. But yeah, this is what Zion Thor tries to task like any of them to do. And yeah, the whole taking down any fighter, yeah, that too matches with all sorts. So yeah, it explains more for why this fight is happening, and why fight in the first place. Flamers are most likely the aggressors.
A rock as the trident keeps him still with his head in between the points. While the fight is over,
And it makes you wonder who else they've encountered, and Because before, the ideas for the reboot, I remember thinking of all sorts of spin-off stories, and I guess that could have been another example, what other beings came about. This must be like the third or fourth instance, considering how new the group is. But yeah, later on, the Legion just encounter new foes, nobody familiar. They don't even see the Flamers again, for a reason that's explained later on. But yeah, it's just it's just more set up.
Nicole confronts the Flamo, asking why the need for this attack. The Flamos admit they were sent to try and find certain.
And as you can also tell, there's no life taking. I think that's a philosophy I've also tried to be consistent with, because they've had to take down every bad guy, or at least a couple of them, or no, 3 out of 4. They were like, yeah, he needs to go. But as for the other two, the Legion, like all their members, are quite restrained, despite having to break the rule book a couple of times when they need to.
Forms of energy, and they were told to take down any.
Yeah, because actually, I think that hasn't also been quite explored. But definitely a couple of tidbits, but it's just more so about the power and the responsibility and and not like a Spider-Man way. I'm talking about abilities that harm the setting more so. I think that's the kind of thing I'm going for, despite impact to living beings. And what else I was going to say? That sorry, that's a machine happening. Otherwise, leave the planet. No, sorry, I'm stuck. It might come back to me later on, but we'll see.
Anyone.
And so yeah, I think the Flamers could have had a far more formal ship design, just like any other ship throughout this show, really. And yeah, you can even find 3D models of it from a YouTube, which is cool looking back, I suppose. But anyway, they're off and they've been spared, and so yeah.
They had to fight from the stars, confusing them. Nicole provides mercy and tells them to leave the planet.
And as you can also imagine, this is, like with the mention of spaceships, you can probably infer space travel, which is not so much in this particular story, but definitely elsewhere.
Otherwise, they would have to be locked away on Earth, or worse. And so, the Flamos fly away to their ship, which is like a giant.
So that explains more on how they track things, which does come up multiple times. This helps account for all sorts, and thankfully enough, there's been any cases of let's just put this ghost ability on so we can like sneak into Earth. Actually, there's been one case of it, but that doesn't involve a spaceship, so that is consistent. But yeah, it looks like Earth can account for all sorts, and so yeah, good to have that defense up.
Metallic Flamo but horizontal, mainly blue with Flamo face and dragon wing-shaped fins on both sides. The vehicle then.
So you can guess that Nicole's quite blunt at this point, and yeah, you'll find it more later on. But yeah, she has her own car as well, which also doesn't come up often. Yeah, sadly not. Anyway.
Charges up and flies up, kept an eye on by the Legion, and will be kept out for thanks to Earth's atmospheric.
Once again, why does she have her own car? What makes it special? I guess if she's a captain, then yeah, sometimes higher ups do have their own vehicles, but I don't know. And also, why is it more armoured? That's I don't know. I feel like that's a tiny plot hole somewhere. Yeah, actually, I'm definitely more of a fan of like fiction and alien stuff, because sometimes I do struggle with how the real world works, because I remember a couple of cases where I'm quite interested in crime narratives, but I don't know the full picture of how the law for all the policing works. Like, granted, I watched a load of shows, but I only know very basic bits and bobs, and not to mention I've hardly watched any army content either. The most I can understand is like Call of Duty, but that's like the strategic side of things, so that kind of it. Anyway.
Activity tracker. Nicole then turns to look at both Pod and Arvin, disappointed in them, and then tells.
And I feel like that's a bit blatant, but I guess it is going for a more family audience. Not to mention, it's not just no dialogue; it's also me trying to, um, just give enough detail, but not enough to bog down the audience. That's what I didn't really want to do, but it's just making it simple enough to be like, okay, so that's the point, that's the theme, how's it going to be explored? So yeah, that's the kind of angle I go for, but maybe it could have been like more subtle by being like, oh, just simply just don't mention the team working part. I could have wrote, oh, Nicole was still disappointed from what happened earlier. So yeah.
Them to get back in her 4x4. A Jeep-like car but more armoured, hers is a darker green compared.
I feel like that should have been more subtle as well. At least you did get a bit more idea why Pod does has these issues.
To the lighter green Jeeps which are more common around the base.
And that's also like admitting the flaw quite early in the story as well. I feel like there should be like more of a mystery, more subtly again. Yeah, never mind.
All the Legion members are decent fighters, but they all lack teamwork. Arvin is still trying to find ways to use his abilities. Pod has.
That doesn't really come back again. Because Pod has like his own problems, despite only hearing snippets of Zynfall's plans. So yeah, I think that should have accounted for as well.
Trust issues, and Nicole treats her team members as assets for her bidding rather than mates she can work with. In the end, the Flamos do lose the fight, and they do admit that they were sent to do this task.
So I just wait, I don't. Oh, but ultimately, Flamos fight again. I don't understand that.
On Earth to find something. This rings a few bells in Pod's head.
Alright, yeah, sorry about that. Let's try and find where we left off.
Tilda Chapter 1, an introduction. With dark blue fighter, so Nicole mainly blue fighters, but on Earth to find something. This rings a few bells in Pod's head, but ultimately the Flamos fight again and leave both quickly and aggressively, refusing to provide any more answers. Despite the limited information, a pattern is created, and other aliens.
Yeah, I feel like some information was probably accidentally repeated, because it just sounds like the Flamers being confronted again. That's a bit confusing, unless I'm wrong. Hang on. There you go, sorry. There you go, I'm good. Had to move. Anyway, so, yeah, refusing answers. Yes, I think that it's like one of those cases of, okay, if they're refusing, then we're going to have to find the answers elsewhere, to which, yeah, it's a common mindset.
Have said something similar. Regardless, they go and make their way to the base in Nicole's 4x4, where we do meet another potential member of this team.
And yeah, that's the first chapter. As you can see, I've had to like squeeze the videos due to I recorded at the wrong time. Anyway, so yeah, who is this potential addition? Oh, hang on, I've got vehicle noise. Yeah, sorry, these interruptions will be very few and far between. Anyway, let's continue.
Tilda Chapter 2, our hero. We now meet.
Yeah, the question mark is, hinting of it being like, oh, this guy. Anyway, Zambi in the remake or reboot, he has a updated design, one that's far more exciting and such. It has like more of a salamander design with the back spikes. Well, actually, no, not there, because if I like the 8-bit art, I've struggled of how to do that. But it still has a tail though, and he has more interesting colours, and yeah, I just managed to update him more. I think the cap is bit weird. I don't know. I strangely like it, even if it's a Earth thing. Yeah, caps. And also, yeah, this is another weird thing which you'll find out later on. Somehow Zami managed to get away with being a grey-skinned human, despite being an alien. And to mention he's probably human just with grey skin. It's a bit. Yeah, it's a bit lackluster looking back, because in my updated design, the tail and the spikes and he's often has glowing eyes, so it makes you think, oh yes, I can see why this alien is, adaptive to electricity and the way he produces it, but he's just a guy with grey skin at this point. It's the end of There's nothing that screams, oh, electricity, other than like the colours and the technology. But yeah, so I guess it does, he does wear like, at this point you can see how he's wearing like normal clothes, and so he has come from a very mundane position, and then he's going to go into something more exciting.
Sammy, antisocial, a fan of technology, and charismatic towards himself.
So yeah, I think that there's bits and bobs like that which help define us more of his personality. There's even the mention of a sunset later, and that does pay off later on in the third book, but yeah, I've just achieves that.
5 foot tall, normal build, wearing a normal blue top and denim jeans, alongside a cool blue cap and light blue tinted sunglasses.
Yeah, blue seems to be his colour.
He is currently a weapons engineer at Earth's base. While he is meant
How and why? um, yeah, it's just because I've been careful with what Earth does with aliens, but so at the moment, Pod is said to be the first Earth alien encounter. Like the first Legion member to be found, uh, but yeah, Pod must have been found recently, like surely, and Zaman most likely will probably be living on Earth for quite some time then. And despite my effort to be like, oh, you just have to be, settling around, despite being an alien. Yeah, it's just, it doesn't quite sit right. I think I was just trying to, plug up like the problems, but in the reboot and even in that animation I did last year, just Zamin to be, just like called to adventure towards Earth, that makes, more sense, even if his origin's a bit more of a mystery. I think that's what I was trying to account for, but yeah, in this him settle on Earth, yeah, it doesn't quite work anymore.
to help create more of what currently exists, he is creating his weapons to get himself more of an audience despite not wanting to get close to anyone. When he isn't with the
And that's more one aspect of a character anyway.
technology, occasionally there are times when he likes to watch a sunset. It has been one thing that keeps Sammy going, keeping him motivated, enabling time.
I think that's quite nice because if it just goes to show what else does he like doing, and it looks like he has moments of sitting and having a think. So yeah, there's a bit more of a layer to him.
Time to think about the future, whether they are gadget ideas or anything else grander. He has invented all sorts such as blunt weapons that coat around your arm.
And yeah, every weapon explained here is what he does possess. It does get more abstract later on, but yeah, it's more specific at this point.
And even a full metallic suit. Now he has created a forearm shooter that can spray lightning, and he is going to try and pitch it to some of the president's men.
Um, yeah, I think this pitch is quite short in that. At least you do get some explanation for how these weapons work. It looks like something he's tried a couple of times. He's probably been employed recently as well. I think that's the partial impression I've got. So yeah.
Or
Also, how did he manage to book it, and how was he allowed, and how often do the politicians come in? Also, I kind of like the small joke. Yeah, president's men or politicians. So I think I was just trying to simplify it more by having roles be multi-purpose, because the servicemen apparently are, in my story there, like the police, firemen and ambulance combined. Like, what a job, and you're almost like an army man too. So yeah, it's simpler, but it's just extremely, like, once again, it just doesn't quite work. Like, imagine taking like a job that has four purposes at once, like four rather big ones. That is just absolutely crazy. Yeah, I think if I'm carrying that over to the reboot, then yeah, that'll be way more accounted.
politicians for short. He mainly creates gadgets in his own house, but he also uses the time when he works.
How did he afford him get his own house? I'm not sure. I suppose it explains where he lives, and I guess everyone else has their own home. They don't really sleep at the base, so okay.
At the base, sometimes creating more of what currently exists like laser guns, the kind which you shoot for ages.
So yeah, this explains, what he, is meant to do, but he tries to squeeze his hobby in between, to which, I can relate.
But if fired too many times, it will heat up and require a self-charge before it's ready.
And yeah, that explains how laser guns work in this world. It's not exchanging mags or clips, either way. But yeah, it's just it's just how it works basically.
For action again shortly after.
And yes, that does mean Nicole's weapon too.
He always likes to make progress towards his work, which also includes his aircraft, knowing every inch.
Yeah, pretty much like me. There's definitely instances where my own life and inspiration kind of comes into this, and there's bits and bobs of Zami is almost like an example
of his creations. While Zami did try and explain how unique this new invention is,
yep, he sure does like his technology,
as well as his prior ones, they still got rejected, mainly because of the amount of electricity needed to fuel these.
And that's a fairly reasonable reason. Yeah, I don't know what's fueling electricity. Is everything like super solar, super wave energy, super wind turbines? I don't know. That I think I should account for as well.
What Zami can't quite reveal yet is that he's an alien who can produce his lightning, managing to get away with being a grey-skinned human. As he grew up in an
How and why did he manage to hide that, especially when he was younger? If he was younger, he would have been like zapping bullies with this. I could have used like a similar reason to Pod. Maybe because in the X-Men series, the powers don't come until a lot later in some characters' ages, don't they? Like late to early teen age. But yeah, at least Pod has an excuse for why his powers didn't come about later on and how that's facilitated. But it looks like Zami always had that access, and yeah, that he hadn't really have anyone to ground those morals. So I just feel like he would have been like locked up, if he, yeah, if he is like a bit of a show off, because he won't be self-taught. He wouldn't be saying, "Oh, maybe I won't zap anyone." He might have got a couple of telling off bits and bobs, but I don't know.
orphanage of humans, revealing no powers. No one thought he was alien despite his skin. Acting like a human.
And that is another piece of history which is hardly explained and like accounted for nor comes back. Like it does fill in some history, but I just felt like there would be way more into it and how it would have worked. And Zami would have had no parents listed and accounted for, so yeah, that too doesn't really make any sense.
Since his years as a toddler. And so, he is now back to square one, and Zami is back at his table, surrounded by multiple gadget makers at their thick blue desks, sharing the same floor and wall color as everywhere else within the base, with their greyish-green.
And they weren't really explaining what they looked like. In the storybook, it was just basically the servicemen, which means 5 job roles. So God knows how many job roles they have. I think this would have been like maybe this planet should have been like like an alien planet instead of Earth. Like I know Earth can be like represented in many different ways in fiction, especially in the future, but this is just extremely little.
Zami sits down and wonders what to do next, but that is where
we get some idea what the base looks like, even aside the image.
his repetitive routine gets him down, being belittled by other people once again, in this case, one of the servicemen. What are servicemen, you ask? Essentially nearly every emergency service.
These rhetorical questions don't often come up. It's like a partially like quick way of writing, which doesn't really come up every now and again. I feel like more of that would have made the story a bit more exciting, because a lot of it is explanation, but there's been cases where sometimes when I read back some bits and bobs, there is like a sense of building up, and as you remember in the review, there are like cases where like on the edge of your seat kind of feeling, which it's good that I've done that. Hang on.
In one collective. The police, army, ambulance, and firemen all in one. They all wear a jade green bodysuit which is well armored.
Which makes no sense, as I explained before.
with a belt to manage all their tools and a visor around the front of their head. There is one, however, who has been picking on him before, and
I don't know about the Pfizer part, if it's like analytical technology, but they do have a whole heap of tools, which explained in the first book, but doesn't really come back again. Although I think the servicemen are probably at the most prominent in this book.
Zami has had enough. And he grabs hold of his third and final.
Who is he, and does he get accounted for again? I think it 1 or 2 times, but that's a very tiny setup and payoff. Maybe it could have been like more of a character, but I guess it's just there to add more spice to Zami's days, I suppose.
Final invention and zaps the serviceman with it. Retron, the head of Earth security, witnesses this, gets hold of Zami and aims to throw him.
I think final invention at this point. I'm not sure actually, because what does he? I think he creates 1 or 2 things, but nothing significant compared to what he's invented at this point.
Out. Retron, despite running on metallic prosthetic legs and a crutch, rushes Zami through the base, grabbing Zami around the shoulder while.
I say a quick thing. Yeah, Retron is probably one of my favorite characters. I don't quite remember the inspiration, but he's a representation of because he used to be, as you'll find out later on throughout the series, he used to be a hero, and then apparently, oh wait, no, hang on, Pod wasn't the first alien encounter. Apparently there was like a fight with aliens or something. Hopefully the books will help catch me up, and hopefully I'll work more of a timeline. But apparently there was one alien battle which caused Retron's injuries, and at the point where he really the injuries have affected his fighting ability, and that's made him miserable. He wants to be the hero again, and yet he hasn't really had that chance. But instead of thinking optimistically, he's extremely rash with a lot of people, and he just makes sure that nobody ever overcomes him. And it looks like Retron knows how to tell off others, and Zami being not human, shows that Retron does have a severe bias. But yeah, it's a bit too simplistic, because it's almost as if aliens injured him, and therefore he doesn't like any aliens. To which I feel like there should have been a bit more to it. And yeah, like for what specific
Also hurt by.
hang on, it just makes you wonder, which specific aliens did get him, unless it just has to be every alien. Yeah, I think that would have to be a bit more nuanced, but regardless, yeah, it does have a lot of interesting moments, because even if each book has like its own primary villain, he's like a little villain in the background who does come up in and out. And I think that's why I'm almost tempted to say that the 4th book is my favourite. I love the 5th one because I really like finales, and I kind of like Design 4 as well. I know it's a bit silly to say that you like your own characters, but it's just if they have like a lot of cool aspects to it, then yeah. But yeah, I think Retron is just like really interesting. He has the most amount of work in the 4th book, compared to what the other books do for him. And I think he works quite consistently. I think he. Okay, we'll just see what he's like as time goes on. But yeah, he's just very heavy-handed. I think that's the best way to describe him.
By the grip. General Mike Gunner, in charge of the base, however, sees this, and so aims to try and get hold of Zami from Retron.
Oh yes, so Mike is in charge of the base, and Retron oversees the planet, and I think that's where going back to one particular base doesn't quite work, because Retron could have been seen overseeing all sorts of other bases. But yeah, we don't really get a lot of how Mike runs the base. There's like tiny snippets, but not as much, like with how all of these higher ups his roles work. Sorry, that's a lot of S's. But yeah, so Mike and Retron, they've known each other for a long time, even their president as well. But yeah, Mike and Retron, they're pretty much the opposites. Like Mike is very fascinated by alien life, and as you find out later on, he's quite one towards Zami compared to Retron, so there's that kind of parallel which I quite like. I say as a small spoiler, I remember coming up with a load of what if scenarios, and one of them is that the spoilers in the fourth book, Retron went to fight against Mike, which leads to uh, the end of Mike's life. But it just makes you wonder, what if Mike was the one that lived? That could have been like very interesting, with what the following story could have looked like. So yeah, I felt like maybe I could do a what if, but I don't know. It's just that with my reboot, I'm just trying to stick to this format, whilst also making a load of changes, trying to figure out what worked and what didn't.
Retron is eager to fire Zami for assault and chuck him out of the base. He likes to stick to his own rules. Not always liking Mike's slight bending of rules, but Zami's situation could be a misunderstanding.
So yeah, it's just a hint of Retron being like really inflexible compared to Mike, who probably seems to be good at planning as he goes along, but I guess we'll see more of what he's like.
Mike and Retron are both in their 70s. Mike always wears a thick jumper and long sleeve with good body warmth alongside.
I don't think zapping someone could be looked in another way, especially if Zami was aiming. It wasn't an accident. And even if Zami wasn't the aggressor, he then thought back a bit too much, so that's a bit much. Also, Retron and Mike are in the 70s. That is okay. And they're still able to fight. Good for them.
Good boots, a bald head and a robotic hand. Retron on the other hand wears his old army uniform, full of medals, with shiny trousers, smart shoes with...
Oh yeah, that robotic hand of Mike doesn't always come up. It's like a very basic one, despite having a couple of ideas to make it like a tech one. But I think that's another example as well, because both Mike and Retron, Mike and the president, whoever the president's name is, they too have injuries, but unlike Retron, they don't get bogged down by them. But I think it's just Mike and the president. I think they accept with what they want to achieve or what they can achieve, but Retron just wants to be on the top of the podium like all the time. That's the kind of idea it's going for.
Which also suit outdoors, grey hair alongside a damaged eye with no...
Also, I feel like this description of Retron should have come earlier, despite because his name came first. But I still like his description. So he has a damaged eye as well, so that will make things easier. And I wonder what kind of medals, that would have been nice to expand upon.
Pupil. Even though no one knows that Zami is an alien. Retron can almost see this in Zami, adding to Retron's distaste for Zami. Retron is not a fan of alien minorities. They caused Retron's injuries, taking away...
Okay. Was Retron looking for any excuse to throw Zami out? Because Retron would have more leverage against Mike, right? Like, granted, yeah, this is Zami's first time being an aggressor, but I don't know, like, how was he hiding in the first place? Is it what Mike did or what the president did? I'm not sure. Oh gosh, my story's not working very well at this point. It does get a whole heap better, I do promise you.
Away Retron's ability to fight, or at least reducing it significantly. Regardless, Mike nicely takes Zami from Retron. Retron gets called in because there is some activity in space going on, too close to the Earth, and Mike takes Zami to his office, where both of them can have a chat.
So yeah, that event helps Mike Zami get on, and Retron having to go elsewhere. So it's a important event which finally splits them off. Because if that didn't happen, I reckon that Retron and Mike would have kept arguing, and Zami probably would just be standing around being like, "Well, I don't know, what do I do now? I don't even have a gadget to work on." But anyway, you'll see what Retron gets taken later on. But not to mention, even if Retron is like rather mean, he still works. He still cares about situations. He wants to protect Earth, like absolutely. He just puts his own goals first almost.
While Zami did zap someone, Mike gives Zami a small telling off. But he also believes in giving chances to others after wrongdoings.
So yeah, there is a consequence. So yeah, I probably should have been more of the telling off, and it's a bit weird to go from that to be like, oh hey, how about joining this team? So it's a tad, I'm a bit mixed on that. given chances. Okay, yeah, I think I can see that working because because Nicole has a history of a couple of bits and bobs, and so does Pod. So yeah, I can see how Mike has that kind of personality trait from time to time. And yeah, that is it. Let's move on to the next one.
Tilda Chapter 2, Our Hero. We now meet
Sorry, let's try again. Yeah, yeah, that's why I've got each part subheaded. Yeah, it's quite lengthy, but anyway, let's continue. Oh, by the way, the only pop culture reference I placed on, yeah, I'm a super fan of the band. Yeah, yeah, I just had to like reference them in some way, just to give them a bit more limelight. I know their music is popular, but I feel like my generation could be more into them, and as you can see, it's like a voyage reference to which. Yeah, I wish that was well, that idea came way after these novels were completed. So imagine that being like a plot point from time to time. That could have actually been quite neat. Uh, but anyway, so yeah, just looks like a neat decoration, despite the very probably quite a basic room. But anyway, let's just see what the scene does.
Tilda Chapter 3, To the Head's Office.
What I just can't believe that punctuation is accounted for. It just ruins each beginning almost. What the tilde? I'm not sure.
The office has been entered.
Oh yeah, so we're going to the office before going into the Legion's building. Yeah, Legion building is what's visualized.
The only room in the base which uses different color walls and floors. The floor is soft, and Mike has cool wallpaper, earth-themed yet still formal, wowing
That sounds like a kid's room of some kind. Actually, I could see it working. So we've seen where people have wallpaper of maps across the world, for instance. I think that's what I was trying to go for, but maybe that's what it is, but I don't know. I just feel like every room should be the same. And I guess it's a way to make Mike's room stand out and explain more of his personality, but I don't know, it should be similar. Have like a picture frame at least, to which we do, which adds a bit more history.
anyone who would enter. Not to mention the many certificates he has earned, and a portrait of him,
What were those certificates? I don't know. Was the Legion wasn't really no the president makes it achievement later on, but definitely not yet. But just makes you wonder, what did Mike achieve? But I suppose you can infer he's a good soldier.
Tron and the president. As they sit down, Mike and Zammy have a good chat.
So yeah, the portrait probably hints at history. Not to mention it means that the president's in the picture in some way. No pun intended.
So good that Zammy has never met a nicer person. Mike has gone on to say that he created
Really? David didn't make any mates that say. I suppose he'd been closed off, but for that long. Okay.
a secretive team that solves alien-based missions out of the public eye, something which sounds cool.
Cool in theory, but quite impractical looking back, even if the whole alien bits and bobs, well actually no, that the alien bits and bobs has been prominent at a point where Retron got injured from a battle, and then Pod was the first to come about, and Arvin would have come somehow, and Zammy managed to get away with living on Earth for this long. Yeah, something in the history and all the timeline doesn't quite add up.
Especially for Zammy. As Mike is the founder of the Legion, Mike pitched this team to the
So yes, I think far more excited for Zammy, some way he can show off, but he's yet to learn.
president, thinking that the help beyond the stars could help defend Earth and perhaps other worlds. Especially as
Which is quite a bold idea, and I think there's definitely a load of pros and cons, but that hasn't really been discussed as much as I wanted to, actually. Yeah, I feel like maybe I could do more of that in the reboot somewhat. The reboot will just be like visual short animations, so it will hint at a couple of things, yeah, not massive novels like this. Um, but yeah, yeah, it looks like Mike, etc., were very lucky to get these singular specimens. None of them were hostile, compared to what Signfall managed to get hold of. Yeah, I managed to think quite well for why certain beings were on Signfall's side and who wasn't. There's a couple of bits and bobs like that.
Pod was the first alien ally for the Earth, seeing that not all aliens
Okay, so that is a hint. Okay.
are hostile, and despite
Not to mention, could Retron be pawned in a battle, but just not very keen on aliens anyway? You know, just like a normal mission on Earth with all humans. Um, yeah, I think that sounds even more shallow. I think it would have to be like an alien battle. That's how I kind of visioned it at first.
the negative possibilities, it is an idea that has potential, and this is why the Legion is under the radar
What is the negative possibilities and the potential? That should have been expanded upon.
for now, one step at a time. Zami even warms up to Mike quickly at a point.
Yeah, I think that's rather sensible, you know, making them a low-profile team. And yeah, everything's vaguely low-profile at this point until like the following 2 chapters. So yeah, at least that's sensible.
When Zami readily admits that he's an alien, to which Mike thinks that was the case, but thinks of it as alright.
Wow, that's quick.
If not cool, because it would certainly work with the fact that there are some aliens in the team, making Zami more of a fit. Zami explains that he can not only produce his lightning but can store it in a variety of gadgets. Mike picks up on this and writes,
Yeah, there's one story I've thought of which I'll definitely be creating soon, where Zami does fight another of his race once you know, his race comes back, and um, yeah, I think his race are more, you know, they just like producing the lightning on its own, but Zami likes to take it through the, you know, use his power through technology, which makes him stand out. So yeah, I think that's what I quite like about my fictional universe. There's definitely oddities within the race they're a part of. And yeah, Zami's not only just an alien amongst humans, he's, you know, he stands out in his own race. Maybe there might be some inspired by him, you know, in like the future somewhere, but that's how far I've come. But it's like a really, you know, cool variation, and I guess the gadget kind of thing helps direct his power, you know, especially if a normal one of his kind would know how to direct it without the need of technology. So yeah, once again, it's just exploring different concepts, which is rather cool.
this as a message which is then sent to the Legion once Zami and the Legion meet face to face. And so, as Mike and Zami go to the formerly named Legion building, Mike talks more about each member
What a great name. I can't believe I stuck with it.
of the Legion, so far. Before Zami sees the Legion, Nicole has a small rant
All the so far bit makes something exciting. Yeah, just open for more invitations, I suppose.
with Pod and Arvin about how they are lacking teamwork. After fighting
How long was she ranting for? They probably came out an hour or two ago. That's lengthy.
their own flamos instead of working together to fight them all. Arvin is disappointed and Pod is angered, wondering why he is even staying in the base if he hasn't been given a reason to trust them.
Pod's side of the story, I can see why, considering later on. But yeah, I think Arvin's just a nice soul who must have tried to work hard. Yeah, Pod is definitely the more complex character of the two. Yeah, Pod is just like a friendly side character. One thing, hang on. Alright, let's go.
Considering he used to be part of a clan that has given him such a rough time. It also doesn't make it easier that Pod feels like he is a
Which we find out later on.
burden to be genetically modified to fight. He hasn't had a proper positive moment recently at
Now that is another interesting part of his character. You know, it's like something I've even tried to work out in the reboot as well. You know, Pod, he's like, as it said, genetically modified to fight. You know, knows how to fight extremely well. You know, with just brain power. You know, without any training. And I think a part of him is reluctant or wished he was made for something else. But I guess he does have. He has to use these skills somehow, and so there's like a proper dilemma. I think that you can still infer in the story, but I think that would be a lot more fun to explore in the reboot.
a point where he has been disliking himself. Instead of talking to them calmly, she has an idea.
Yeah, that already makes definitely Blade in some way. Yeah, that's just, but yeah, I just remember just like disliking myself quite a lot of times. So yeah, just reading that kind of just made me feel sad a bit. It just reminded me of a couple of memories just then. But anyway, enough of the backstory. Let's continue.
Here to have another practice in the base and see if they can cooperate, but Arvin and Pod are getting tired of being shouted at.
And I think that we can infer from time to time. So yeah, good practice.
And so, Zami is taken.
I say, imagine. Wait, hang on. How old is the Legion, and how long would it have taken for this building to make, especially with a practice like simulation? That must have taken like a lot of work. And this is just humans we're talking about. And I say a quick thing. Humans are definitely they're beings that just very simple with their abilities, and I suppose they're very good with the technology and the ideas they have. They're quite intelligent, so I think that's what makes humans stand out in this universe, to which I quite like.
Into the Legion. Entering the Legion building, which is bluer than the base and more modern. It has a TV, a couple of...
Quite weird timing for Zami to come in when training's about to come about, but why didn't Mike leave all of them? Why didn't he stick around? It's not like he joined Retron later on. He might have done, but I'm not sure. It just felt like throwing someone in a pool of sharks.
Sofas, very few...
Well, not that severe, but, probably in Sammy's perspective.
Windows and areas for combat practice, such as one which is about to be...
The very few windows part, that's, it's just showing how distant it is from the rest of the world. So that detail I like. And a couple of other details, makes the place a bit more warm and comforting. So, nice bits and bobs.
Used. But when Zami arrives, there is a mixed reaction. Arvin is excited to have a new member.
I just suddenly noticed
Tilda Chapter 3, to the head's office. The office has been entered. The only room in the base which uses different colour walls and floors. The floor is soft, and Mike has cool wallpaper, earth-themed yet still formal, allowing anyone who would enter. Not to mention the many certificates he has earned, and a portrait of him, Retron and the President. As they sit down, Mike and Zami have a good chat.
Arvin's almost like the positive one, which is quite nice. Spoiler alert: he gets cut from the story, despite being quite a nice addition to the story. But I think when I'm just trying to, reboot all of my characters again, I just remember struggling to how to place him all around. I guess once you get to the animations, you'll explain, just see why. No, I'll do the explaining. Sorry.
So good that Zami has never met a nicer person.
And that part does pay off quite a few times, actually, yeah.
Mike has gone on to say that he created a secretive team. That's...
So all sorts of different sponsors, well, definitely stands out personality-wise at this point.
Solves alien-based missions out of the public eye, something which sounds cool, especially for Zami. As Mike is the founder of the Legion, Mike pitched...
And I think that's how... I think I remember writing that line which explains bits and bobs later on. So there's a couple of information bits which you'll find out later on, but just makes you wonder what other information was there. How did Zami even get a document when he's pretending to be a human?
This team to the President, thinking that the help beyond the stars could help defend Earth and perhaps...
And this exchange does go to show that they are kind of close in some way. Mike just, helps keep an eye on Nicole. It's almost like a father-daughter kind of bond in some way. It does get explored quite nicely from time to time, but maybe there could have been more.
Perhaps other worlds. Especially as Pod was the first alien ally for the Earth, seeing that not all aliens are hostile, and despite the negative possibilities, it is an idea that has potential, and this is why the Legion is under the radar.
That's nothing special nor original. It's nice though, I guess it does, even if it is like quite cliche, at least it does kind of show what kind of response Mike has. He's like trying to get Nicole to be a bit more positive, to which, that is partially a through line.
For now, one step at a time. Zami even warms up to Mike quickly at a point when Zami...
Which goes to show that Mike definitely gets on with Bogdanov in some way. Not a lot of time between them, but at least that's something.
Readily admits that he's an alien, to which Mike thinks that was the case, but thinks of it as alright, if not cool, because it would certainly work with the fact that there are some aliens in the team, making Zami more of a...
one person or one being into a new era, that's a bit. I guess I have been just afraid of them for quite some time, but a new era? That's a bit much. Oh, actually, well, no, I think I'll be foreshadowing.
Fit. Zami explains that he can not only produce his lightning but can store it in a variety of gadgets. Mike picks up on this and writes this as a message which is then sent to the Legion once Zami and the Legion meet face to face. And so, as Mike and Zami go to the formerly named Legion building, Mike talks more.
Okay, well, all of those gadgets must have been fetched like extremely quickly. So at least that explains why Mike did have to go. So okay, that's accounted for. That's good. Um, so yeah, looks like Zami's just thrown into something, isn't he?
About each member of the Legion, so far. Before Zami sees the Legion, Nicole has a small rant with Pod and Arvin about
Okay, so that room is separate from the sofa and TV and the other poster, presumably. Oh, I know it's in there. Just imagine that, like trying to learn how to shoot and then you just see these colours behind you, or just like in your outline somewhere.
how they are lacking teamwork. After fighting their own flamos, instead
Yeah, this kind of trial and practice, you can infer that happens a couple of times, but doesn't really, like come back like very rarely.
of working together to fight them all. Arvin is disappointed and Pod is angered, wondering why he is even staying in the base if he hasn't been given a reason to try.
And yeah, I think right here with Nicola's like the kind of person doesn't really like have any downtime. Mike attempts it mildly in some way just then, despite needing to go, but Nicola's like, no, just gonna keep working, and yeah, get an already fairly good idea of that.
Trust them, considering he used to be part of a clan that has given
And yes, the images don't always cover the entire of the text. Maybe it could have been like more drawings, but I just remember being quite tight with time then. Yeah, that's why my new reboot will just have it's been made with very not a lot of time, but it'll build up a much bigger picture over time.
him such a rough time. It also doesn't make it easier that Pod feels like he is a burden to be genetically.
And that's just simply outlining it in the middle of this scene. That's a bit early. It could have been just her wanting like a legacy, and then maybe the Legion could have had an argument and Nicole being like, oh, I want my legacy because of my ancestry, I want to keep that continuing. That's not right. Anyway, but yeah, just stating it all out there, because there were just, I think looking back, there were just like a couple of times where I was like, oh, I'm missing this particular piece of information, I'm just gonna whack it in here, and I think I should have been a bit more thoughtful of where to place bits and bobs, although I think it's okay here because it explains a bit more for why she's having that ongoing work mindset, because if she wants to work towards like a legacy, then I feel like she doesn't have time to chill. I think that's the kind of mindset she has.
Modified to fight, he hasn't had a proper positive moment recently at a point where he has been disliking himself. Instead of
Um, oh yeah, there is like history and bits and bobs which explains those kind of insecurities. So yeah, I feel like she must have felt like she's not achieving much. To which yeah, so interesting start.
Talking to them calmly, she has an idea to have another practice in the base and see if they can cooperate, but Arvin and Pod are getting tired of being shouted at. And so, Zami is taken to.
Oh yeah, just to clarify, so there's many like miniature barriers in this room, but the base also has like a dome around it, presumably an invisible one because it comes up later.
The Legion. Entering the Legion building.
And yeah, this just explains how their training procedure goes, and there is like when it's just a moment where the three of them, I do say three of them, they make an effort with the goal, but Zami tries the shortcut, to which it just represents how Zami's like taking shortcuts or just wanted to show off in his own way, but when it comes to the many serious situations, he is unable to do these shortcuts. This is a trial like of some kind versus the real deals like later on. So it's just Sammy being because when he goes into his first battle, he's quite distraught. It's not just something he can solve with a couple of wires, to which he sorts out here. He has to face it, and as a team, to which I like that.
Which is bluer than the base and more modern.
And the robot is somewhat drawn in an okay way in the storybook, despite only seeing behind him.
It has a TV, a couple of
That reminds me, I need to post those 3D pictures because I made some scenes on Autodesk Maya which helped me draw some pages on my storybook, especially like the different angles of vehicles and that. And so yeah.
sofas, very few windows and areas for combat practice, such as one which is about to be used. But when Zami arrives, there is a mixed reaction. Arvin is excited to have a new member.
Where did the robot come from? Like dropped from the ceiling? Did it come from the floor? Did it just turn on? I don't know. I didn't write it somehow.
Plus Zami looks like
Imagine if that robot did have like much more of a role, like another Legion member that was needed. That could have been quite an interesting idea. I suppose if I did make the robot, more of a interesting or practical design, then yeah, I could see that happening. But how would you fit in the team? I'm not sure, because there was just times where the Legion was just made up of 6 members. But funny enough, when I was watching Cool Runnings, because just seeing just a simple team of 4 people, bouncing off one another, almost like a less is more kind of situation. So yeah, that's why it's just like down to 4 of them. Well, in that case, anyway, there is Dion who comes about later on, almost like the 5th member, but he's like a special case, which you'll find out later on.
someone who is into technology like Arvin is. Pod, however, is skeptical, and Nicole is keeping an open mind. As Mike leaves Zami with the Legion, Nicole wonders about Zami.
And yeah, in this trial, the team were vaguely successful. It's just something that kind of ruins it, but at least it just goes to show that the team can work together.
Alongside the others, and Mike
And I think it's just because of Nicole being slightly mardy with them.
states that all the relevant information will be provided. Mike then asks how the mission was earlier, and Nicole explains that the lack of teamwork is making it faulty. The end goals are successful, but the journey there is rough, even nearly
Which, yeah, looks like, yeah, Pod and Arvin are definitely like their own little duo in some way at a point where it does come up plenty of times throughout the story. To jump in front of Arvin like that, that's kind of cool, especially when Pod's like the tank and Arvin's like the smallest character ever.
resulting in failures. Mike reassures Nicole that it will all get better with practice. And perhaps be a bit nicer with the Legion. Even Mike quickly says hello to both Pod and Arvin, and both smile and say hello back, wishing Mike stays. Even though they say that the whole Legion approach when resolving.
And I say it's kind of lucky that he manages to like find well, I suppose he would have had to skirt around being like, oh, you know what, how do I do this? But not to mention, there isn't like hardly any cases where he goes through technology and he's like, okay, this is X, Y, and Z, this is how to do it. But he maybe does like very, like he does become practical like loads of times, but not at a point where he's like cutting wires and that. And I suppose it's actually his character does get more interesting because he does experiment more so with energy than technology. But yeah, this is always like a kind of a neat trait. Well, actually, no, he just make a machine with Arvin later on, so it just goes to show what his knowledge is like. He is quite smart despite the snarky personality.
Danger is still flawed. That is where Mike thought that Zami would help bring the team into.
Also, one way to stop the operation, like that's like cutting like the Wi-Fi or Bluetooth. I can see how the barriers would come down and how the trial would stop. Maybe if everything's like under one power source, but the robot. Oh, no wireless connection. Okay, that kind of accounts it, but it's just really daft. I just feel like there would be more to shut down an entire room operation. Like, imagine in X-Men, The Last Stand, where imagine if one of the one of like the kids wanted to do a bit of trolling, and he just just managed to manipulate some technology, and then when they're in the main X-Men are in the simulation, they're like, oh no, why is this Sentinel disappearing? And the kids are like, haha, we just cut a wire, we just disrupted your simulation. Yeah, it's like that's happening, it's just really daft. I know this is like a smaller scale kind of scene, but even then.
A new era. Mike puts Zami with the Legion as Zami finds Mike comforting, but now he is thrown into a trial as Mike leaves, making.
There could be like a couple of setup bits and bobs. For instance, Nicole doesn't get quite near light, doesn't fire then, but there's no moment where she's taking a special shot later on, maybe in a couple of cases, but this is almost like a abstract teamwork kind of thing. There's no like proper setup. Like for instance, Pod doesn't really jump in front of Arvin again, despite it shows that Pod's defensive of him, but it's just up in the air kind of setup instead of specific things that come back later.
Zami uneasy. Before Mike leaves the Legion, Mike orders some servicemen to take Zamis gadgets to the Legion's building so that Zami has his full potential before the trial begins. The Legion was already about to perform the teamwork by getting them all into the obstacle room, where they could practice taking down a goon while remaining in cover. This throws Zami off the rails, no conversation yet, but the trial.
And I think I kind of pictured that as like him going on a bit of a monologue, but I think that should have been explained because it sounds like he's just firing electricity everywhere or something, I don't know.
The trial is starting no thanks to Nicole's orders. Nicole for some time has been
And as you find out later on, Pod dislikes those who want showing off power because with how I explained Pod earlier, with him being reluctant to have power but just trying to find ways to use it wisely, which I'll put a pin on that because of events in book 4. But he has a Pod that's like quite an interesting reason for why he doesn't like show offs or thinking they're more powerful than they are. Because it just sounds like Sam is quite annoying and not the best start off for your protagonist. It just like the others kind of sound a bit more interested at this point.
On edge, feeling like the past few days have been lacking in progress, and she is after progress because she wants to be
and I feel like that kind of comes from the culture Pod used to be a part of, to which I can see that happening. And I think it pays off a tad in book 4.
Figure of significant change, pleasing her ancestors who were also soldiers, and so far, she has felt,
which was explained earlier, it did not need to be repeated. I am sorry.
Like she isn't part of her family tree. Even the last time she saw her.
Also, Pod's going to try and fight Zami without the weapon. That's bold. Well, I suppose the weapon could be too lethal to use, and it just shows that Pod can definitely overtake anyone without the need for extra power, which I wonder what the story would have looked like if Pod was just a melee fighter, with just a really cool weapon and just being tough, and then that's it. That the story would look drastically different, but I think him power, that kind of philosophy still maintains, and not to mention it was set up, with the hints of power that Trident has.
Parents, they were mainly disappointed in her due to her past actions before becoming a soldier. The barriers are up, and a practice robot is around, walking around on 4 mechanical legs and only shooting stun-based lasers. The trial starts well with each Legion member, with Zami somewhat being added to the Legion
How much?
Immediately. And so, the trial begins. Now they are all at the training corner.
Yeah, it just sounds like Zami taking a load of L's. But Zami definitely has taken a lot of damage. I think he has a similar physiology compared to a human, maybe slightly stronger, but that's why this fight is quite short and reasonably so.
It starts to
Not to mention, Pod and Zami fighting each other does kind of come up a couple of times as well.
shape shift, barriers are up and a prototype robot firing at them.
So Marvin was almost like a kind of being who helps Pod rethink, and not to mention Nicole being like the stay-at one by being like, "Oi, stop this right now." So I can see how them two would stop Pod at this point.
To no end. The goal is to try and take it down from behind, despite its own body being able to turn 360 degrees.
And I can see how that would upset Zami, just basic martial arts against a somewhat powerful being. I can see how Zami would feel bad.
And so the Legion must advance. Nicole makes it to a barrier ahead thanks to using her riot shield. Arvin tries to charge up his body to fire green energy from his mouth, trying to shoot and...
Oh, actually, Pod does... Oh, you might expand on this to Nicole later on, and maybe Nicole just listen to what Pod explains later on, and maybe Nicole just find out eventually, but I feel like this is a good way of being subtle about it before being oh, okay, so what's the rest of the story going to be like? So that's done slightly well, but I was just wondering how that pays off.
Distract the robot, and it turns to make the robot focus on Arvin mildly, and even Pod jumps in the way to take the stun laser instead of Arvin. Distracted, Nicole starts to get behind.
Even if this line is a tad out of nowhere, at least it creates a bit of a stake of, oh no, this team is going to be finished, then all of the aliens would have to leave the Earth, to which kind of pays off in book 5. Well, the end of 4 anyway. So it's just like I said, a bit of tension for why this team must work, just for everyone's sake.
The robot. However, Nicole states to Zami that he can fire his lightning blaster carefully while moving ahead, but Zami doesn't want to be undermined. He is going to do something that he thinks makes him feel better, hacking through the...
I wonder what those updates were, but so I think Zami left the room. Did I write that in? I'm not sure, but we can somewhat infer that, how Zami would have left the room. Anyway, let's go on to the next part. Alright, we're about to meet the villains. Let's see how they go.
Tilda Chapter 4, A Villainous Meeting. So, you remember Retron hearing about atmospheric activity within the skies of the Earth?
Yes, I do.
This is because there is a massive ship that is about to cause a ruckus. Earlier, the ship's owner, Orpheon, leader of the net robots, did go and see who he somewhat represents, Xyanthor. Xyanthor has the best biology compared to any other race.
So this is probably like hours before what happened. So this is almost like a flashback, but yeah.
Is very tough, fast, and can live for ages. Not only that, but
It's quite basic on paper, almost like every superpower ability, well, superhero kind of physique, but trust me, Xyanthor's like a whole new level compared to any other race in this universe.
he has got loads of races to join his cause. Running the Deepar Fortress,
So it's almost as if Xyanthor already has like a legion of his own,
where he and his allies relax or train, and it is mainly located in underspace, which is where you can visit if you send a spaceship down.
Oh yeah, so by the way, Deeper Fortress, that I quite like because it's deep, and not to mention, so to explain underspace, because when you think about space exploration, have you noticed that spaceships only go across the planet? And granted, we're very deep, it's going to our solar systems, but just imagine what it would have been like to travel by going directly up in space, or you go lower down in space. And so in my fictional universe, to go lower down in space is a bit more cosmic, which is a real cool idea, and explains more why Xyanthor's hidden and more protected almost. So it's a very cool concept, and maybe it should have been expanded upon more, maybe. Yeah.
Downwards, leading to an area full of energetic activity, making him very hard to find whether you have senses or trying to go through underspace itself.
Which is later explained to be extremely tricky to do.
Deepar Fortress is your average stone castle, but it has been made up of a form of cosmic obsidian which often exerts heat until it runs out, making the castle black. And
that material does come up in book 4. You'll see and find out why.
Was a material Xyanthor's...
I've mentioned book 4 a lot, aren't I? Yeah, I think it just goes to show how book 4 is like. If I'm thinking about it, if this story was to be rewritten again, maybe it could have been, like for instance, if it was forced into a trilogy, then the book 4 could be the middle chapter, and book 5. Book 5 is strangely the shortest one, but I can see how. Just the whole finale bits and bobs. So because looking back, book 2 and 3, despite the useful bits and bobs, are still kind of small, but at least the first book gets a pass for being extremely handy with the setup, etc.
Race, the Naravas used to use often. There is more to it. There is a...
I pronounce it Naravas, but you do you.
Training room, you can eat anywhere, and a council room for anyone to discuss when meetings occur alongside some old natural land which is attached.
Oh yeah, the natural land. I think that comes about a couple of times. I wish I explained that more because that's kind of interesting, because the whole thing is floating. But yeah, I wonder what the training room was like. And the council room does come up a couple of times, so I quite like the 1 or 2 moments that happen. Anyway.
To this floating fortress. Even a force field to help the whole craft adapt some of the most dangerous places in the universe. Both Orpheon and Xyanthor both
force field. Oh, craft, as in spacecraft. Okay. Well, if they're written on space, that's already the most dangerous thing in the universe. So I just feel like that's kind of useless information then. Sorry.
Want a form of energy called the life force. Orpheon wants it to
So yeah, the four elements. I'm starting to remember their names. They have quite fancy names, but they are um, the life force. Yeah, the life force is Livinger, which is the life representing type of energy, and no other type of energy has like a more informal name. Like for instance, when in book 2, Ozona loses his power, it's just simply called Ozone's power. I felt like it should be called Air Force or something. Something far more better because I think that's one reason why the life energy is like my favorite because it has like another name and such.
add numbers to his race of net robots, but Xionthor wants it for a much bigger purpose. And so the
So yeah, I quite like the dynamic between the villain for this specific story and the villain for the whole entire scheme, and it can somewhat infer. Well, definitely later on, he's going to be more at the forefront in this specific book. And but yeah, so they're both wanted for different reasons, and yeah, they have a deal which I can somewhat get behind. Yeah, for Orpheus to find it and use it first, then for Xynthor to use it because he wants to use it for more long-term reasons. So go if I found the right words in time. And so yeah, I quite like the speech bubbles too. They explain a couple of bits and bobs. And not to mention, Orpheon's ship is called the Nitromancer, which I quite like that name. It's a bit cheesy, but whatever floats your spaceship. Sorry, that's a really cheesy line. I'm sorry, I cringe.
deal is made. Both Xionthor and Orpheon have known each other for more. Tilda Chapter 4.
I think that should be a deal, considering we're about to explain the deal.
A villainous meeting. So, you remember Retron hearing about
More than 100 years, crikey. Like, I know a battle happened, but it kind of makes you wonder what happened in between, especially how they kept in contact. But I guess I could try and fill in these gaps eventually, but we get bits and bobs.
atmospheric activity within the skies of the Earth? This is because there is a massive ship that is about to cause a ruckus. Earlier, the ship's owner
I feel like that should have been revealed in a more shocking way, but other than book 4, there isn't any surprise element. And, well, I suppose, Xyphor's mindset, it does. Oh, yeah, by the way, that is the same room as the animation. Yeah, it just helps repurpose. Um, what was I saying? Yeah, so it's almost as if, whatever Orpheon achieves will be for nothing, but it's still Earth, etc., still at stake. So, yeah, regardless, Xyphor is going to be on top one way or another. That's what's also kind of interesting about the story.
Orpheon, leader of the net robots, did go and see who he somewhat
That's nice and abstract, and you find out the rest of the subtext later on.
represents, Xionthor. Xionthor has the best biology compared to any other race, is very tough, fast,
Um, Let me just go back actually. What was that?
need for Xionthor's extra assistance. They don't see each other much, but Orpheon assistance.
But it's aware that Snowfall is in charge for doing the best of his efforts without the need for that. Oh, okay, so yeah, Orpheon just basically works to his own resources, which gets brought up again. When Orpheon does turn out to need Snowfall's help, which doesn't help with the situation, but it's like a first time situation. Just goes to show how unique the Legion become.
They don't see each other much, but Orpheon is someone who Xionthor
Despite knowing each other for 100 years. Are you kidding? It could be anything.
has had less conflict with compared to other allies. Going back to the evil plan, the life force has been tracked to be on Earth thanks to the net robots.
A quick thing, I like how it's called Evil Plan. Like, I know it's kind of informal, but yeah, I think you do have to be, black and white in some way, but to explain, what the Legion are doing right and what Orpheon, etc., are doing wrong. So, yeah, I think Orpheon doesn't really have, like, he does have his own reasons. He just wants to populate his army and thus his race. But it would be more than just a load of gun-wheeled robots, wouldn't it? I feel like that should have been expanded upon. Imagine if Orpheon had wanted. Well, I think he wanted to invade everything, even with whatever Xyphor wants invaded. I suppose that's kind of the point, for Orpheon to be like, Xynfor's grand little army of some sort. Well, not little, quite big actually. If things went a certain way. Uh, uh, so yeah, they just have their own conflicts in that, which stops us seeing each other as much. So that's a reasonable reason, and Xynfor has to stay down there due to all sorts of factors.
Using a minor trace of the life force from another planet they previously invaded, and now
And what was that planet? I've made like a full universe guide, so yeah, just makes you wonder what planet it was. And there's another planet that Orpheum invades, at one point, I just wondered what that was, and did he manage to duplicate a whole load of village bots then? Yeah, what was that planet? That would have been. I thought I got all the planets in my guide, including all new ones that I had to generate and such. Anyway.
the Earth is next. The net robots thank
But whatever this trace life force comes from. Oh yeah, by the way, that's the thing. Even if there's the main embodiment of an energy, there's bits and bobs of it they can find throughout the universe, which is a somewhat nice touch. Um, so yeah, and evaded Earth is next function to. Okay, so yeah, this just explains how Orpheum found the Earth, and yeah, Mount Libon, yeah, that's like the mountain that got brought up loads of times, and yes, it's the same Libon that comes from Simon Le Bon's name, yeah, from Dran Dran. Yeah, I quite like that band, so yeah, I just thought it's a good coordinate for a mountain, so yeah, why not?
to their analytical technology from Orpheon's cruiser, also known as the Netromancer. The main source of the life force is around a mountain called Mount Lobon, somewhere which has been kept an eye on, and
Hang on, I don't think that text lined up properly. Let me just read that.
a mountain called Mount Lobon, somewhere which has been kept an eye on and defended by the base of Earth. The Netromancer is the size of a cruise
Oh,
ship, mainly rectangular, mixing between
so this explains what the ship looks like. You can see it on the right speech bubble.
dark grey and dark green, with one large windscreen at the front. 4 exhaust parts of the back engine alongside large wings on either side. If you are one
The Orpheon's ship design and parts of the interior, if any, it was somewhat inspired by, Donkey Kong Jungle Climber. That I know that game is kind of looked down upon because people only care about the country series, to which I can see why it's almost like the superior Donkey Kong content. But Jungle Climber, I know that it's not like the best gameplay, but by the way, it is actually quite a lot of fun despite alternative mechanics. It's like an alternative way of completing levels. You like climb across and upwards, and it actually has some really cool ideas. And to me, it's almost like one of the definitive DK versus King K. Rool kind of stories. And yeah, granted, I can see a couple of bits and bobs, a couple of plot holes. But anyway, King K. Rool, he has a cool ship, and that too has like the 4 thrusters, and it's like quite big. I just remember being quite scared of the ship level in the game. So yeah, that's where most of the inspiration comes from. Anyway, do play that game if you still have your DS or watch the gameplay. It's quite enjoyable. Even watch the cutscenes as well. They help you catch you up, and it's quite an interesting story.
wondering why Xynthor is staying in his fortress whilst he sends many off to do his bidding, it's because he is after form.
Yeah, that's an explanation. I think it's an explanation that's fairly okay, but there's this moment in book 4 where he gets massively burnt, and that's where he's like, "Oh well, I'm injured, I'm vulnerable anyway, so let's go and get going." But even if he is like vulnerable in that way, I don't know. It's just like imagine if he did like leave the fortress. He's already the most powerful being, and maybe it could have worked if he was like quite feeble, but only putting all the energy together helps. So maybe he could have been more of a energy based fighter, with 1 or 2 or more types of elements. But I don't know. He's just already like extremely tough already. So I just felt like he would have most likely stopped the Legion first time. Because after all, the Legion, they don't know how to work together. They don't have the additional members that are added later on, and Earth is probably not the best fighting terrain for the Legion either. I could just see Xynthor completely like smashing up the ground and using it to his advantage. But yeah, that could have been another what if scenario. What if Xynthor did decide to become more involved in each story? Like, gosh, I think every table would have turned, except for book 5, of course.
Forms of energy that require good condition body-wise. And so he needs to be free of any significant injury, and considering how strong he is, his foes will be keen to scar him badly.
That's quite an ending sentence. Yeah, that definitely won't be easy. I felt I should have written something like that, but you already get an idea that he's quite strong. The injury doesn't really affect him much in book 5, but where I think it should have done. So it's not the best reason to stay or why he hasn't quite left, but at least it's something and he can somewhat infer it. But not to mention, Orphean has a far better reason for why he's inactive. He's trying to upgrade himself and so he can see how everything's going about. But then when he's needed, he's finished partially on time, with his upgrading. It makes you wonder why he didn't do the upgrading earlier, but I think, did he find like some information recently? I'm not sure. Anyway, let's get on to the next one.
Tilda Chapter 5. The battle begins. Meanwhile,
Yeah, it's quite a cool battle shot. I like how the Legion's vehicle is like in the forefront and it really stands out. And you can also see the Necromancer, it's just vaguely there in the background. And yeah, imagine if Sammy's vehicle, did have wings. I think like that too would have completely altered the story. I think it would have quickened things, but to have wheels, yeah, I can see that happening. A vehicle of that size would take ages to make.
Zammy has locked himself in a changing room. Mike saw Zammy running off earlier, so Mike, after tracking
A changing room which he has to himself. Oh, I can see that happening.
down Zammy, tries to speak with Zammy, getting him to give the Legion another chance after Nicole explains to Mike earlier what happened. Mike,
how did he track Zammy? Was that through tech or through common sense, looking around and just seeing how or where Zammy went? I'm not sure.
could see that Zammy likes the attention, and so with a new threat happening to the Earth,
So yeah, Mike seems to be quite good at looking through people, especially Zammy, and I feel like if Zammy being understood in the way he is, I feel that's why they kind of get on, although there's not a lot of bonding, not a lot of times they have together.
explains that Zammy could be a very useful addition to the Legion, even asking what Zammy has that the others do not. As Zammy wants an audience for him and his gadget.
Absolutely, and Zammy is more tech-based, he has the lightning, has his own vehicle, yeah, all sorts.
He is keen to provide them with a sense of purpose, whether it's making technology better as well as making himself godly, keen to make himself untouchable, so he doesn't get belittled again. Even then, he would only...
None of that explains why he's keen on the whole battling side of things. Maybe he thought he could get through that without scratch. I feel like that's probably subtext you can infer in some way, which, yeah, I can see how that could play out.
Be heroic for his power rather than for the safety of others. Zammy then goes on to explain that he does have a vehicle, meaning...
Oh, yeah, sorry, hang on, yeah, just putting my charger in. Okay, I'm good. Anyway, Zammy being godly as well, I think that too could have been expanded upon, because I really like it where characters, have like a type of superiority complex in the way they control the situation, especially a protagonist making a controversial decision. Sammy has a couple of cases, but I feel like that should be expanded upon.
To be a flying one, but it is on wheels for now. This makes Mike pleased as Retron...
Did Sammy? No, sorry, Mike. Did he not like find that nearby his house and not move that along too? Not to mention the vehicle would have to be moved very quickly despite what's happening. Also, looking at the image below, yeah, it's just pretty cool image. Then you can see how the Nitrobots are a bit more overwhelming. Yeah, where's the servicemen's tanks in crafts? I'm not sure. Anyway, the novel explains it.
Texted Mike earlier saying that none of the servicemen's vehicles shall be provided to the Legion. Not even any backup from any serviceman, only running on Nicole.
I can somewhat see why. Oh yeah, and also accounts for Nicole's vehicle as well, so at least that's accounted for. So I can see why Vectron want to allow this allowance, considering every resource that's needed. Yeah, a singular car, I can see how that's useful, for shielding and that. And it just shows more of Retron's bias.
4x4, while useful, would be inferior to what kind of vehicle Zammy has made, especially when Zami showed Mike some digital visuals for
Yeah, imagine that's the what if scenario. You know, what if all of them were in a 4x4 vehicle? That would have been like quite funny, and I feel like they would have like not made it through the Arctic or something. Oh yeah, of course they would have to cross water and that.
what it is like and what it can do. Zami eventually sees himself as useful, and so
Okay, that's actually right handy. Yeah, so even more information from Mike can see how the vehicle could play out in this new mission.
is willing to give the Legion another shot, able to show off once more. Mike tries to explain to Zami that Nicole and Pod are not a fan of show-offs and that Zami would require some training during the journey.
Okay, so at least Mike attempts to try and downplay that. So yeah, I think that's just good to be accounted.
To which Zami scoffs at behind Mike's back as Mike leads Zami back to the Legion. Following Mike anyway, seeing a small chance that he could make him.
That does not make Sammy very likable. You know, Scott behind Mike. You know, Mike's been nothing but a nice teammate. Like, why? I can't believe I wrote him like this. Hopefully it'll be like a small scoff. Maybe it should have been like, oh, we know, still probably going to show off anyway, but maybe that's still scoffing. I'm not sure. There's a tad of a through line, I suppose.
Himself more significant again. As the servicemen get themselves ready, Mike quickly gets Zami back with the Legion. Nicole and Pod are annoyed, but Mike eases them and talks about how Zami is going to be more willing to follow. Plus, more to the team means better, and Zami has his vehicle which has already arrived at the base. Mike ordered his servicemen to get to Zami's home and drop off the vehicle near the Legion building, out of everyone's knowledge.
Okay, that's the see Nicole and Pod's reaction to Zemi coming back, but Mike helps sort them out. You can see how Mike's quite useful on a couple of occasions. And we also have an explanation of how the vehicle moved, even if it was a bit late.
And so, with the Legion now having their vehicle after Retron refused to provide one, not to mention Nicole's 4x4
Behind the Legion's back, that's a bit schemy. I'm not sure what to make of that. If that was Mike being like, I don't know, I just can't see it being secretive like this.
being too small, Zami and the rest go the vehicle. The vehicle is called the Awesome Atone, and Zami talks about every aspect of the
Go to the vehicle or go for the vehicle, sorry.
That the wheels are good for any terrain, it has a boat mode for water, the driving is as simple as a set of child's play.
I feel like some text is missing there, but oh well. But anyway, just semi explaining there, yeah, just goes to show that how I knows his vehicle, and also with the console being very simple, you know, that's how Nicole can interact with it easily, which yeah, it's good. Yeah, you want a vehicle that's approachable.
Buttons, a variety of turrets which all can shoot.
That boat mode does not come back again as much as I like it. Yeah, it's just because if you can fly, then you don't need it.
Lightning, and there is space for
I
invention.
feel like this should have been like more water exploration, especially, you know, whereas Pods and Orca, you know, why has he swam more? For like some missed opportunity. But, you know, Pod being an Orca, you know, creatures that are very strategic, occasionally combatic, quite intelligent, they have their own ways of adapting to environments, and they're quite stubborn, and they can be, you know, teamwork kind of beings. And having water and ice as abilities also adds to that reason for Pod's design. So yeah, it's rather cool to do that.
The vehicle itself is bigger than a double-deck bus. It is long.
Yeah, I remember the Awesome Atone. Also, that's kind of a cool vehicle name. I still like the name. Sorry, that's a bit arrogant of me. But yeah, I just remember when the Atone was just shooting lasers, but I was like, hang on, you know, everything else is shooting lasers. You know, if the Atone is Zami's vehicle, then, you know, why not shoot lightning too? So that already makes his vehicle stand out. I've already explained how Zami's ship design was inspired by an Instagram post. I'll put it up if I can find it again, but it's still on my Instagram quite some time ago. We're talking about 2018, 2019, probably 2017 even. Yeah, like a very cool vehicle with, like, granted it had propellers at the front, but I just quite like the sled-like design, you know, especially with the massive dome on top. That's why I kind of tried to translate in the pixelated style. I think it looks kind of cool again, the storybook. But yeah, it's definitely a unique ship, and I bet there's some bits about the design that could have improved. I seem to be alright with it though. Yeah, I like it, especially the rain issue, it enables it to skid somewhat, so yeah, it's almost like a flying sled of some kind.
The visa that goes from one side of the front to the other, with both a side and back opening. It is a nice darker blue which matches the color of Zamis' suit. And there are massive two thick rail
So
parts
yeah, those kind of details can be important, especially how it opens at the sides. Yeah, that's important. Yeah, imagine if I contradicted it by saying, "Oh, it opens from behind." Oh no, it does have a back opening. Okay, so but at least it's good to explain how the vehicle is, how you enter or exit it. It just helps with the logic.
on either side that would be used for landing, but for now, act as where the wheels are a part of. These temporary wheels are tractor-sized but more like car ones. With two engines at
That's good improvising.
the back of the end of the railing alongside two stubs at the
Okay. I feel like the wheels would have to be bigger because the ship being bigger too. Fair enough.
front of the railing to balance the between the front and back of the ship. All of this sounds good to Nicole, and so she talks about her next plan. She will drive. Pod will keep a lookout and Zami and Arvin can create a gadget to absorb the power of the life.
So yeah, with her having a car, if it was a vehicle on wheels, then yeah, I can see how she can maneuver in it.
Tilda Chapter 5. The battle begins. Meanwhile, Zami has locked himself in a chair.
So I just need to go forward again. Where is it? Oh yeah, there you go.
More like car ones. With two engines at the back of the end of the railing alongside two stubs at the front of the railing to balance the between the front and back of the ship. All of this sounds
Balance the between. I don't think that sounds right. Sorry about that.
good to Nicole, and so she talks about her next plan. She will drive. Pod will keep a lookout and Zami and Arvin can create a gadget to absorb the power of the life force.
Oh yeah, so oh yeah, yeah. Sorry, this is the second day recording. I don't remember them recording. Uh, I think it's probably stated later where yeah, they're going to get hold of the life force which is hidden in the mountain, and um, yeah, I just felt like we just jumped straight to that plan. I could be wrong though, but also looking back, because whilst there is like reasons why it's like they're in a mountain and it's kept there safely, but I think it is just better to keep it at the base. So it's almost as if yeah, like the mountain is just there just to create a adventure. Granted, a very useful adventure, but yeah, once again, maybe there could have been like a reason the life force isn't at the base. It could have been like interfering with technology, for instance. Sure, that could have been a good reason. But yes, too bad it's not in the story.
Considering Zami can create technology to absorb something as powerful as lightning, his form of lightning is slightly different compared to what the sky can produce.
Yeah, I can imagine there's some difference. I didn't really establish the differences though. Would have been nice to.
Zami's power is bluer and more powerful despite being able to vary between.
Okay, so that is so it varies more. Okay, so that's actually quite interesting. Yeah, because I nearly said that Zami's power is like maybe more electricity than lightning, but yeah, that's cool.
Between stun or fatal levels. Zami was reluctant and wanted to drive. Even Arvin wishes he could drive but
Also, I think maybe stun based or stunning. I think that's probably the better correction.
cannot, and Nicole will say that in other scenarios Zami will be able to drive or pilot. But right now, Nicole
Yeah, so yeah, Zami's feels a bit undermined there again, and but for him to be reassured that he is going to be piloting once the ship is there, it just goes to show that Zami will be given a more useful role, because maybe that is like a part of him, him wanting to feel more useful.
and Pod do not invent, so Zami is forced into the gadget-creating role, reluctant to work with Arvin.
It's more strongly encouraged, I would say. Yeah, it's important after all. I feel like forced is a bit too strong.
Despite Arvin looking forward to it, and both Zami and Arvin are to use a collection of metal scraps and see what can be made. With all of this fitting,
Um, I wonder what those scraps were doing. That well, I guess were they also in Sammy's house and then take it along, and then I can imagine how a load of metal pieces can help create any gadget that Zama makes. But not to mention the Atone is based off a serviceman craft ship, so that's like carried over with Sammy's like unique features. If the story does talk about that, because that was the original intention. But yeah, I think the scraps would have been like already at Sammy's home rather than already be inside the vehicle, because maybe Sammy likes inventing stuff in his vehicle, treat it as like a caravan, I suppose, his own little hiding spot. And not to mention, I've been, looking forward um, to helping Zammy. Yeah, I think that's quite a nice, uh, just go show how friendly Arvin is.
In the ceiling drawers of the awesome Atone. As the base starts getting ready, every serviceman is contacted.
So it was inside a vehicle then. Okay. But also drawers. Because if the inside of the Ultimate Tone does have a couple of bits and bobs, that's explained, but to have drawers and that, I suppose it just shows how things can be stored inside the vehicle.
Digitally about a plan. Thanks to Earth's base's hacking, that's where they find out that Orpheon is after the life force and wants to create more net robots.
And not to mention, despite being humans and aliens, they both use the same name for the because I feel like the humans would call it. I feel like the humans would call it like the life force or the green energy, whilst Orpheon would probably use the correct terminology. I think what I could have wrote is saying that Orpheon, despite using a different name, he describes what really matters with the energy that Earth is currently in possession of. Yeah, and not to mention, I think it would have been because there's a couple of bits and bobs about humans trying to see what the energy is all about, but I feel like I would have wanted more of it. Could have, maybe Retron could have, had an idea of how to use it against anybody else, because he may be against aliens, but I could see him work with energy. He goes for Nitro, which is slightly supernatural in its own way. And anyway, all of the scene draws with this. The base gets ready. Serviceman's got to digitally about a plan. Okay, so I think that's probably about the upcoming battle. So yeah.
Robots using that form of energy, alongside liquid netro, which can be used to form weapons and net robot bodies. But
so we have more of a reason why Orpheon started all of this in the first place. Not to mention the liquid netro is another type of material that Orpheon has. And there's a reason why both types of materials are needed. Because I remember hearing about stories where the characters are like, "Oh, I definitely want this one thing," and then later on they're like, "Oh, but I want this other thing as well," which kind of like stuffs the pacing like later on in the story. But what I've established is that yes, the life force is like the center of all of this, but Orpheon does have this other material to simply assist. It's a material that he does have, but of course he can't have X without Y.
no life force means no living net robots. Netro is the most powerful metal.
And that's another interesting angle I thought about doing, because robots are normally just all digital, but to have metallic beings that have some kind of soul in them, I just thought that could be quite an interesting concept, because we've had so many robots over the years, but not to mention the Nitrobots having a type of life force in them. If that does it does get explored slightly, although I feel like there could have been way more. For instance, if they are like living beings, what their personalities like, do all of them want to fight? Once everything is sorted, what's their day-to-day routine going to look like? I just felt like that should be explored way more.
To exist in the universe, not only the strongest and most withstanding, but it can be morphed into various tech when used correctly.
So that just basically explains how Nitro works. Yeah, very important material. There's only a couple of other materials that exist, but Nitro I feel like is the only one given a name. But after all, it is extremely important. And not to mention, throughout fiction, kind of a bit tired of being like, oh, this is the strongest material. But I guess, I don't know how it makes it stand out. I guess like it's not just powerful, but how it's used and how malleable it is. I think that's what helps this material stand out. But honestly, when you put every like fictional material together, like for instance, could vibranium or adamantium be stronger than nitro, for instance? That's actually quite an interesting question, because what's like the uh, I tell you what, maybe nitro could be slightly weaker, because when you like read comic books, you have characters that can they do like all sorts of like crazy feats, like withstanding supernovas or something. Yeah, my characters don't really. They still have some kind of vulnerability. Like, granted, Zine4 is extremely tough, but I think he at least has a consistent weakness despite how tough he is, which we'll see later on.
It comes from the stars. Additionally, for the plan to work, Orpheum
Yeah, coming from stars is uh, what other fiction does have grant? Actually, of course, there's the obvious one, Marvel. That has materials from stars. So yeah, I tried to have some kind of spin on it, because Marvel has its own star metal, which is um what's the material made for Mjolnir? Uh, that I can't quite remember, but that's like more of a mythical kind of angle, but mine's more like a high tech kind of approach. And I think the his Dark Materials universe has that, because I remember hearing about Sky Iron, but I don't think that necessarily means the stars, but could be wrong. Yeah, maybe I could have been more original by being like, these moons you could mine from, for instance. Yeah, maybe I'll do something like that.
does need a whole planet so he can form many net robots at once, instead of forming very few net robots on an island, etc. But Orpheon is eager to wipe away Earth's security.
So yeah, that explains more of the plan. Yeah, because sometimes when you like create villain plans, you do have to like account for all sorts. But this explains why the whole planet has to come at a cost because of this scheme. What in the eyes of Orpheus, yeah, very terrible idea. Yeah. Oh yeah, why not go for like a more emptier planet? Because there'll be others, won't they? Unless they're out of choices. I'm not sure, but we can imagine that the drama's quite big, but I think it's all relegated to that one ship. So we're talking about maybe like an entire country's worth of beings, I suppose. Uh, yeah, yeah, maybe I should account to that for that more.
First, so the base will give the net robots a fight, keeping them in one area.
Which is yeah, definitely a sensible idea. Yeah, because you don't want to like try and do something whilst trying to battle. It's better to all battle first and then continue. Like, interestingly enough, although it's Orpheon who finishes his upgrading and then he goes to Earth on his own, whilst a space battle is happening above, where most of the forces are mostly above then. There's a couple of soldiers like down there, but it's far more scarce then. So yeah, I can see a through line there.
Mike also says to Retron that the Legion will be the one to go to the Life Force, giving them a role.
Um, yeah, Earth definitely would want to keep this in one area, but what about the niche bots? They could have like spread it around to make it trickier. Um, Yeah, but interesting enough, there's no like mention of residents at all. And whilst that is somewhat intentional because of how barren these lands are, but I don't know. I just feel like there could have been like a couple of hikers capturing this footage or something. Yeah, I feel like that should have been like more of a part of book two, instead of Retron being like, "Oh, here's all of the footage. I'll link it all at once." So yeah, that doesn't seem as natural looking back.
To which Retron reluctantly agrees. And Retron can help with the battle like in his old days.
So yeah, I think this is a bit extreme of Retron being like, "Oh." Because whilst he definitely would want to do the battle, as like a great success for his own, but at the same time it's like, oh no, but this leader trying to fetch this energy, that too could be like a great achievement too. But I feel like the leader only fetched to do a task, and they're talk about four well-skilled individuals, so that's already like a small team just going off on an adventure. Like, granted, they do have to overcome a couple of obstacles, but I think at first glance, yeah, just fetching an energy source is definitely far less exciting compared to doing this battle. So it's almost as if Retron wants to do like everything, but I think Mike Does he? Oh yeah, he does. Yeah, he does clarify that. Well, the Legion have to help with something. You can't do everything. That's definitely a subtext that you can infer.
The Legion has their destination, knowing what every step of the journey is like and what to do. They leave the fields around the base, then go through the sea via the Arctic.
I feel like this kind of information should have come up first before Nicole, etc., being like, "Oh, create this machine." Yeah, I feel like that kind of information would have had to be swapped, because if hearing this plan and then and then the team is like, "Oh, let's create this energy absorbing device." So yeah, I think that's what it would have been better. Also, I spelled Arctic wrong. Oops.
And then arrive in another country full of mountains and trees to find Mount Lebanon.
So we do have a clear route, which is pretty much stuck with to. It's only the obstacles coming in and out.
This is a mountain that Pod is mainly familiar with when the life force.
Which country? Because I remember finding out recently about all the names of the Pangaea segments, and despite how prehistoric it was, imagine if actually no, like if Earth did go back to Pangaea, then I think the names would have been kept the same. Although if it's going from left up to the Arctic and then down, it's probably going to go from USA, Arctic, and then the UK. Perhaps I can see that happening.
One day landed on Earth via an unknown escape pod. A set of defenses was built around the mountain to protect a form of energy so powerful that it needed to be.
Yeah, that's why capital letters are important. Yeah, pod and pod. So yeah, that explains a bit more about how Pod came about, because he apparently came at the same time as Life Force did. So oh yeah, defenses. Yeah, so that's definitely accounted for.
Tilda chapter 6.
So
Inside
yeah,
Awesome Atone. Thanks to Zami, the Awesome Atone is cloaked, so the net robots shouldn't be able to find them. They have a big battle to fight after all. After some time, Nicole, Pod, and Arvin are intrigued by the ship's design. Kept somewhere safe. They can see that it uses the resources targeted by aliens for years, but with a couple of adjustments, pods and it even fires the lights of lightning instead of lasers for research. As Zami has been caught up by Mike on what abilities each Legion member has, Nicole and Pod research what Zami has, being able to produce his lightning, which does interest them. But it is a shame that Zami is slightly unwise with those powers in the eyes of Nicole and Pod, who see both Zami and Arvin working at the back of the vehicle. A vehicle that was made so that if the Earth continues to fail to give him the attention Zami wants, then he is willing to go elsewhere, thinking his ship will fix his problems. This is another aspect that Mike did learn about Zami, which is explained to the Legion, which makes the Legion curious about Zami. But Pod is mainly cynical towards Zami after earlier. Nicole wonders why Pod has a bad taste from Zami, and it's because Pod has been hindered by one figure before, another Morphil like he is. Pod was led by a nasty Morphil, Mechajaw, who too was power-obsessed. Even Pod had thoughts that if Zami goes too far, he needs to be brought down before any harm comes to anyone. Nicole does see where Pod is coming from, but tells him to keep an open mind. Zami is too naive to be considered a foe at this point. After asking for more about Mechajaw, all varied such as the life he is led by in a large escape pod, a well-known evil dictator, making the universe go into fear, which shocks Nicole, especially as both Xyanthor and Mechajaw go from planet to planet, really seeing how unsafe the universe is. It's not just Earth getting stepped on. With all these arrivals to Earth searching for energy, this is something Pod has only heard from passing conversations. Zamis trying to figure out what it means. Charged by lightning. However, this conversation is cut short by the fact that Arvin pauses the progress of the energy-absorbing machine to see what Zami is up to. Zami then gets defensive, moving Arvin aside forcefully, to which Pod joins this clash by defending Arvin and nearly hurting Zami again. But Nicole's voice echoes across the ship as she shouts at them all to stop, stopping the clash while still driving. This makes the Legion get back to their roles. Zami and Pod made of a variety of rusty scrap metals, but Arvin remains forgiving. While the mountains do have defenses, but they aren't enough to take on an army. He does need even with the Legion assisting the defenses. Even this clash finishes off as Nicole tells Zami to discontinue the progress towards the suit and help Arvin instead, feeling guilty to have to work with someone whom he could have accidentally hurt. But Arvin shows that
Yeah,
he is
Arvin's
cool
a
with
bit
Zami,
lost with
which
his
eases
history, but
Zami
you know,
into a new
Poddy,
task. Arvin is more forgivable
because yeah,
compared to the
when
others in the Legion.
you know,
So far, he
Pod's
only
mind
managed to add the blunt
snapped,
arm
because I
weapons
think
within
did
the
he?
arms of the
I
suit.
thought he escaped
But the
from a
lightning
battle, so did he
blasters
use
remained
another
separate, making him
another
unprepared for any
alien
combat
escape pod that
situation
wasn't
later.
a or more film make? And not to mention that Zambi was evacuated when he was little, wasn't he? So it is like it will be his alien race with its own unique design. So yeah, there's just more differences.
Adding to why the base and the Legion building are the best places for the form of energy.
And that just explain more for why it's not there's no fighting around the mountain, and not to mention having this battle all around the base here. Like even if Orphean, oh actually no, because the base, yeah, did the base know where Orphean, do they know that Orphean knows where the energy actually is? Because at first glance, there could be like, oh, we'll have this battle nearby the base to give them a false impression that the energies around here, which is a bit of a risk, but at least the base is far better than around the mountain. But yeah, I think that would that have been better? I'm not sure, but that just that means that the whole film would just going from one planet to the next, which I guess could have been an alternative idea instead of Orphean, knowing that this is the definitive planet. I think still fine as it is. But yeah, it's just a bit more reason why the fight is there and not next to the mountain. That would be kind of interesting, but uh, yeah, I think there would have been a couple of impractical bits and bobs.
Room that can hide the element more so, and with a whole army and many vehicles protecting the life force in.
Not to mention, as you can see, the base is just that block there. Like I feel like the Legion building would be an extension from that building, unless it's like another one nearby somewhere, but it's not really visualized. Yeah, because I never really explained, how far the Legion building is compared to the bases, but I reckon it's rather close.
Instead, even if the energy had to be kept safe, there is little time or opportunity to research it despite some progress. Other aspects have been prioritized within planet Earth. Regardless, the Legion hears from the base that Orphean.
Okay, so I think that explains why it was, researched quite a little, because although how long has Pod been on Earth? I'm not sure. It will be the same time as the energy. I mean, and I can see why other things might have to be prioritized, but I don't know. This is a alternative energy source, sourcing life itself. Like, oh gosh, yeah, that would have been like prioritized with research, like absolutely. If encounters of it new. Yeah, that's like, oh yeah, I feel like that's a tiny problem there.
Knows about the mountain after hacking into the Necromancer's systems, so the Legion needs to get the
Yeah,
energy.
what other issues, etc., would have been more prioritized? Well, actually, yeah, there's loads of bits and bobs we would have had to, solve like along the way and maybe prioritize before going for a alternative energy source. But I don't know, I just feel like it would have been nearly as prioritized. But yeah, it's just all sorts, where politics, how to solve crimes, other issues around the world, and then science and research is its own thing. But I don't know. It sounds like the base has all the scientists here, and they're like, oh, we don't have the time. That if that was like the first impression, then that's just me oversimplifying things again. So yeah, I think that's more bits and bobs. Oh no, it's not looking great. I assure you, it does get better and more interesting over time.
Out and protect the energy themselves until the net robots are no longer a threat to Earth. The Legion also had.
Legion is okay, so the Atone can hack into communication as well. Okay, oh, and the hacking is it definitely comes into play a good few times. So yeah, we'll see how that goes.
As their journey planned, going out of the Greenlands, through the sea, then into the Arctic.
Get the energy protector. Okay, so how will they protect it? Because they end up going back to the base. Well, that's not really outlined here. Like they could have stayed by the mountain, although they do get actually because of how things go. They weren't expecting a tank. They weren't expected to lose Arvin, and so the base was probably the base or the Legion building was like the best way to track Arvin. But I feel like um, I don't know, because the Legion themselves can't face the army again if they end up coming back, or even just Orphean, or even another tank. Um, so yeah, I feel like I've got more bits not accounted for again.
Followed by the woods which has Mount Lebanon. And so, The Legion makes its way, and even the servicemen are ready to battle.
I feel like that's repeated information. Sorry about that.
Forming a perimeter around the base. Via many individuals alongside many vehicles too, so it looks like the fight is balanced. Unfortunately, Orpheus
What does this perimeter look like? It sounds cool and we can imagine it, but it's not specified.
cannot join the fight, but there are enough net robots to overthrow the planet as they have done many times before. At the moment, Orpheon is trying to upgrade himself, making himself a much more powerful being, enhancing himself while he guides the battle up in his spaceship, the biggest spaceship there is. He is not only guiding the battle but also keeping tabs on the net robots who are trying to hack.
Yeah, it's definitely good to multitask, between being a strategist whilst you're getting upgraded. Yeah, because there's like a third type of Nitrobot that assists with the upgrades, and we can assume that those little Nitrobots are probably like the repairing type, which is neat and enhances. So yeah, it is all for doing is still trying to be useful. But yeah, if he does need to upgrade himself, yeah, I can see that happening because this is probably their first time fight against Earth. You don't know how powerful they are, and if these Nitrobots are somewhat easy to take down, then yeah, Orpheum needed to be the more powerful one. I guess it makes you wonder why not upgrade the rest, but I think Zynfo would want his energy now, really. And if the numbers and the resources are already there, then it looks like they have a rather good shot. And Orpheum being the more powerful one is already somewhat enough. But yeah, I think there should have been more of a reason why this research or this upgrade is happening now rather than earlier. And why not earlier to upgrade the rest? Oh yeah, interestingly enough, the tanks have their special treatment because of how tough they are. So, but once again, that's production of a couple of tanks, which is done in between the already made resources. But not to mention, this is a potentially 100-year race. So, yeah, why did it take so long for Orpheum to know about this new Nitrobot research or resources, etc.? And how did he find it? Because as a bit of context, there's Dion, who is the a properly upgraded good Nitrobot that was created by Zemion. But where did Zemion hide this research? Was his body found later, or yeah, Zemion's another Nitrobot, by the way, another bigger one like Orpheon is. So yeah, I think that's me. I can imagine why I'm a bit lost once again.
The base's invisible shields. Alongside tracking the progress on 2 new vehicles, his tanks. These tanks are a very dark.
Okay, so we have other Nitrobots trying to do that as well, and yeah, so that is a setup which pays off later on. But yeah, I guess it is a bit odd how the humans are managing to withstand robotic hacking, but I guess it just shows that humans can be really smart. And I wonder what these packers were. Were they dressed like Michael Retron? And once again, were they more servicemen? That's how many roles? 6 roles now in one. The hackers 2. Gosh, that's a whole heap of bits and bobs. You'll need 10 GCSEs to learn about what hacking is like.
Green-grey, with hovering parts, with a short flight function, with 2 small turrets.
And then this is also set up and also explained, and we see all sorts of features which makes you go, oh, I wonder how that's going to work. So yeah, it's bits and bobs like that which make it exciting.
It's on the top, its main shooter at the top, which can also spawn another one on top. These tanks are made up of a much thicker form of Netro. It has a main shooter alongside 2 assisting ones. It is a vehicle that can float, and it also has a.
Oh yeah, if you're wondering about that, so as a small inspiration, New Super Mario Brothers on DS, where the mold tank has one turret that can pile on top of another, which is it's like cartoony but really cool actually. And so that's what I was trying to explain. How it can spawn multiple turrets. Granted, it makes you wonder why not spawn more, but you might need a height difference, and it can also help make it more aerodynamic when it does need to travel from planet to planet. So yeah, I can see that being the case. Shouldn't have been explained though.
device to snatch up the life force and then zoom it back to the ship. For this battle, Mike and Retron have joined the
Also, a quick thing before I forget. So Dion has a hard time against, well, not only those tanks, but against Orphan, against Ozona, against Torrid, and even Zythal, and it just reminds me of when like sometimes the strongest characters often get like beaten up, to show the story. Oh, look at this most powerful being getting beaten up. This is how high the stakes are. So it's just like one of those cases where, like, granted, Dion does have a load of great skills and he's still extremely powerful, but he does get beaten up more times than probably any other character, like severely as well. And yeah, I feel like that should have improved upon. And not to mention, what I find interesting, like in book 4, the only big villain that Dion does not go against is, well, it's kind of Shraptron, but he doesn't get to land a hit against Mephidraw, which, yeah, I just find interesting. Imagine they did fight against one another, but if, Mephidraw just end up possessing another type of energy, then that would have weakened Dion in some way. But Dion is extremely resilient, yep, and yeah, that's a hard word. And yeah, he keeps going despite the damage towards him. So yeah, I think that's the main point. He does keep going, even if he does end up getting like wrecked multiple times. But there is an explanation about how he does get prepared in that. So yeah, sorry, just a small tangent.
fight, with Retron acting as a sniper and Mike with his special revolver-like laser gun and even his assisting
Oh, that device, yeah, it's just even more set up.
drone. While the Legion has their journey, the Serviceman and Netrobot battle is rough.
Oh yeah, even though Retron's a sniper, he's still like in the middle of the battlefield. It's because I know it's a bit daft, but in Call of Duty where with the no scoping and wandering around with a sniper, despite being in a battle of running men with weapons. Yeah, because that's the kind of angle I was thinking of. Because like yes, the sniper, soldiers, they normally have to be in a high, far away space, and then that's where they can get that kind of advantage. But I think Retro can still go for longer range foes, not to mention if that's the kind of weapon he prefers, then so be it. But I guess you could still have, like a quick escape kind of soldier going about and try and make it cool. But I don't know, it would be quite corny as well. But this series does have a bit of corniness as well, so I can see that still working and happening. And yeah. Oh, and not to mention, the Call of Duty, as well as the, you can swap the big scopes for like a normal aimer. So I think having like snipers without, like a massive scope, I think that is a thing. Um, so yeah, I think it can still, once again, it doesn't have to be far away or high up. It can just be already a powerful yet long range shooter.
And both sides have a massive set of abilities. The Serviceman
Yeah, that drone does come about a couple of times. I remember a couple of drawings I did of it. Uh, so yeah, once again, why is there not more drones? Was it just an experiment? It might be actually.
have 2 rapid-fire laser guns which can be conjoined into one gun for more concentrated and more powerful hits. They also have a
Oh, this is where it gets exciting, yeah. Because when researching all sorts of video games, I just remember thinking, oh, which side has which type of type of tools at their disposal. So yeah, this is quite fun.
wide set of vehicles such as tanks for powerful blasts, aircraft for air support, and 4
That was inspired by Call of Duty. I think it was Infinite Warfare that has the type of weapon where you can put either 2 dual-wield ones or more put together.
4s to overwhelm the opposite team as they are fast and all in the vehicles are firing. The Earth's tanks are your average tank, except these have 2 main shooters that can go further up or down like a normal tank, and both the base's tanks. And the Netrobot's tanks can spin at 360 degrees.
Oh yeah, that means that those who drive in the Jeep, the rest will just have like guns pointing at the windows, and yeah, it's almost like a weaker yet faster tank, I suppose. Even if I don't think the 4x4s shoot anything, but it's just those inside.
Except Earth's tanks are a lighter green and have only one firing laser turret. There are many other tools the servicemen have, such as ball-like gadgets which go deep into the crowds of net robots and then explode. The servicemen also have net launchers, which not only can trap multiple net robots, but it enables the servicemen to fire at them more.
Oh yeah, I think these kind of balls like roll along the ground and then explode on impact. I think that's the angle I'm trying to go for. Like those. Once again, Call of Duty. What's those spinning things? Oh, what are they called? I want to call them riptides, but it's not that. Wraps. That's it. Yeah, the wraps. Except these ball gadgets will be like way smaller. But I can see being that useful. Just like rolling around along the ground
Tilda
all
Chapter
sneakily,
5.
especially
The
if it's all
battle
crowded.
begins. Meanwhile,
But yeah,
Zammy has
save
locked himself
explosive
in a
that can
changing
definitely
room.
work.
Mike saw Zammy running off earlier, so Mike, after tracking down Zammy, tries to speak with Zammy, getting him to give the Legion another chance after Nicole explains to Mike earlier.
Yeah, looking back, there's not a lot of cases where net launchers are useful. I feel like you would have to use them very specifically, and I'll just talk about all media.
What happened. Mike could see that Zammy likes the attention, and so with a new threat happening to the Earth, Mike explains that Zammy could be a very useful addition to the Legion, even asking what Zammy has that the others do not.
Yeah, I think it's almost like a baton that has a stun, or maybe like a laser, like a stun, yeah, solid laser. Yeah, nothing like a lightsaber where it just incinerates. It's just more of a zapping tool.
Not. As Zammy wants an audience for him and his gadgets. He is keen to provide them with a sense of purpose, whether it's making technology better as well as making himself godly, keen to make himself untouchable, so he doesn't get belittled again. Even then, he would.
Yeah, I think singular rifles, yeah, which I think the image helps, but yeah, what's also interesting is that they just have their weapons to hold, but both the likes of Dion and Orpheus and even Zemion all can spawn weapons within the body. It just makes you wonder why the soldiers aren't like that, but maybe it's just to make them more efficient.
Only be heroic for his power rather than for the safety of others. Zammy then goes on to explain that he does have a vehicle, meaning to be a flying one, but it is on wheels for now. This makes Mike pleased, as Retron texted Mike earlier saying that none of the servicemen.
It's a bit odd how these robots have maces as weapons, despite being a very medieval tool, but whatever floats their boats. And yeah, there's already kind of quite some difference. Like servicemen have a lot of bits and bobs that help assist them, but it looks like the Nitrobots have, they seem to be not only more aggressive, but to be able to self-repair as well. It looks like first aid is just not as much of a problem for them, which makes them more dangerous.
Vehicles shall be provided to the Legion. Not even any backup from any serviceman, only running on Nicole.
Oh yeah, speed boost is what the likes of Dion and even Orpheus has, so yeah, that's consistent.
4x4, while useful, would be inferior to what kind of vehicle Zammy has made, especially when Zammy showed Mike some digital visuals for what it is.
So there's dogfights happening alongside. Gosh, yeah, it sounds like one of the biggest battles ever.
Is like and what it can do. Zammy eventually sees himself as useful, and so is willing to give the Legion another shot, able to show off once more. Mike tries to explain to Zammy that Nicole and Pod are not a fan of show-offs and that Zammy would require some training during the journey, to which Zammy scoffs at behind Mike's back as.
So yeah, this is despite how explained the battle is. So we have a couple of our not main characters, but characters who we are familiar of. Just see their perspective, how they take note of bits and bobs. So there's a couple of exchanges they have as well. Yeah, and yeah, they still have exchanges despite no dialogue. But yeah, it's a definitely a good idea to see what's in our characters' heads. But we can also imagine how hard this is for servicemen as well. Yeah, there's definitely a couple of ideas that I've had for servicemen, with their stories. They're a rather advanced army, and they could have been probably more advanced, with the Nichbot stuff, but somehow that isn't accounted for. It's almost as if they do have like a lot less purpose as time goes on. Yeah, they have a couple of appearances, but Book 5 is where they like really shrink, but definitely for a reasonable reason.
Mike leads Zammy back to the Legion. Following Mike anyway, seeing a small chance that he could make himself more significant again. As the servicemen get themselves ready, Mike quickly gets Zammy.
Yeah, I can see that happening. The four individuals are quite powerful. Like, yes, it makes who knows why Nicole has her own specific tools. You know, I feel like the servicemen should have, you know, their concussions, etc. Or, you know, because even my concussions in this universe can work as EMPs as well. So yeah, that would have been extremely useful, you know, to slow down like Lichbots and that. Maybe they do, but I don't know. I just can't make too many differences. I think the only way it could make sense if Nicole is like working with experimental stuff, or maybe she could be like an independent soldier. Now that could have been a good reason actually, hence why she has her own tools, and maybe she works with another little base of some kind. Who knows? Uh, but yeah, I can see why, you know, Retron's been annoyed, you know, because even if the battle is hard, if Retron's like, oh, for goodness sake, forget about the Legion, we've got this. So it looks like Retron does have a good sense of confidence. So yeah, fairly balanced fight so far.
Me back with the Legion. Nicole and Pod are annoyed, but Mike eases them and talks about how Zami is going to be more willing to follow. Plus, more.
Oh yeah, so oh yeah, actually that's a disadvantage made into an advantage. Yeah, that should make Retron think, or you know, I'd still have the alternative capabilities. Yeah, unless he's, you know, ashamed of the replacement legs he has. I felt like that should have been expanded more. Uh, check.
To the team means better, and Zami has his vehicle which has already arrived at the base. Mike ordered his servicemen to get to Zami's home and drop off the vehicle near the Legion building.
Oh yeah, is that Retron sniper? Yeah, I can see that being possible. You know, if he has like a good row of like 5 niche bots and in one sniper shot just go through the lot.
Out of everyone's knowledge. And so, with the Legion now having their vehicle after Retron refused to provide one, not to mention Nicole's 4x4 being too small, Zami and the rest go the vehicle. The vehicle is called the
Yeah, that's definitely a difference between weapons. Yeah, it's good to outline that.
Awesome Atone, and Zami talks about every aspect of the vehicle. That the wheels are good for any terrain.
Did I spell row wrong? Unless it's just the accent of the chatter. But I don't know.
It has a boat mode for water. The driving is as simple as a set of child's play buttons. A variety
I
of
feel like the ninja bots have a bit more advantage, but oh well.
turrets which all can shoot lightning, and there is space for invention. The vehicle itself is big.
That would thin the army out a bit, and not to mention, you know, if the, you know, yeah, they do have to keep residents out the way. So yeah, that's definitely good to account for.
Bigger than a double-deck.
Not to mention, you know, did I think is it later on in the story where there's like bunkers, etc., which residents go into because of alien attacks. So if that already exists, then that's cool. You know, it's a way to keep residents safe. But that shouldn't be expanded upon. Like, imagine, you know, like in the future where aliens get more involved and you know, you're trying to have a fun, nice family meal, but then the alarm goes off, and then the mum and dad are like, "Oh well, down to the bunker again." You know, it's for like that should have been more explained. You know, how making the planet more hostile because of galactic activity. Yeah, maybe that's what like a good side story could do, but yeah, we'll just have a good think about that.
Bus. It is long with a visa that goes from one side of the front to the other, with both a side and back opening. It is a nice darker blue which matches the color of Zami's suit. And there are massive two thick red.
So yeah, so is Mike the only one keeping tabs on the Legion's location then? Okay, I can see that happening. Yeah, sorry if I misread that. But yeah, I don't think anyone has time in the base to keep track of the Legion. You know, they're doing their own little useful thing, and those inside the base are too busy keeping the shields up. But not to mention, they must have had like a 1 hour hacking battle to keep the shields up. Because I know the Fast and Furious movies aren't realistic, but I feel like what was realistic in the 8th film was the hacking battle. You know, both the lady hackers, you know, they had their own tricks up their sleeve, and yeah, with one of them closing them off eventually. Yeah, I just feel like that's far more realistic compared to what happens here.
Rail parts on either side that would be used for landing, but for now.
And also, this is an interesting moment. It just goes to show how they see the battle. You know, there's Pod who would feel a bit off, and then Zami looks at this, you know, thinking it's, you know, he doesn't see it as serious as the others, but Nicole does tell him off for that. So yeah, it's like a good hint of what Zami will be going into. You know, fights like this are no joke.
now act as where the wheels are a part of. These temporary wheels are tractor-sized but more like car ones, with two engines at the back of the end of the railing alongside two stubs at the front of the railing to balance the between the front and
Yeah, that's more of Zami's arrogance, if his gadgets were, possessed by all of the servicemen, etc. I feel that should have been explained more. Like imagine if someone said, "Oh, Zami, you have your own tools. That one makes you special, and you won't be as special if you just give everyone else that the same abilities you have." And maybe Zami could have had a good counter by being like, "Oh, I can always." But for instance, with the new powers he has in the third book, he could be like, well, I can be different now. So I feel like that should have been expanded upon or explored.
back of the ship. All of this sounds good to Nicole, and so she talks about her next plan. She will drive. Pod will keep a look.
Yeah, making Zami think. Yeah, so not only is Nicole a strong thinker, but I think Zami has started to realise his ways a bit. So it's almost like August's first hint. Yeah, because when you think about the character arc structure, you already have the character set with the belief, and then you have a couple of times where that belief is like challenged or judged a couple of times, and it makes them think, okay, is my belief correct? But once again, I'll put up the template because it's really useful.
Out and Zami and Arvin can create a gadget to absorb the power of the life force. Considering Zami can create technology to absorb,
and I feel like that was hinted earlier. But I feel like we're getting on to some new information, but yet again, some bits and bobs have been repeated.
Something as powerful as lightning, his form of lightning is slightly different compared to what the sky can produce. Zami's power is bluer and more powerful despite being able to...
Which is both set up and would make sense, because I think, today I think the most powerful stuff we have is probably, nuclear material for power stations and such.
Vary between stun or fatal levels. Zami was reluctant and wanted to drive.
So yeah, they're accounting for that, because obviously, with the energy would have landed on this planet, so yeah, so they already know that it doesn't belong on Earth. I feel like that could be an interesting debate, whether Earth actually now possesses this energy or not, or whether it needed to go wherever it needed to go, because it gets returned to the Titrans later on, which does have its own couple of bits and bobs, that should have improved upon. But yeah, that could have been like a rather good debate between Legion members or even like the governments within Earth. Not to mention, the third book, introduces, what all of these elements are about, but I feel like the story should have leaned more into it. We'll get there when we get there. It's still on book one.
Even Arvin wishes he could drive but cannot, and Nicole will say that in other scenarios...
Oh yeah, that's quite a sneaky thing to do, be like, oh, you get on with this, and Zami just works on his own stuff, to which, gets told off for that as well. At least Zami does create something handy later on, but even then, not to mention, what he creates is just a metallic suit, which, yes, it is a feat in itself, but nothing too electricity based, I suppose.
Zami will be able to drive or pilot. But right now, Nicole and Pod do not invent, so...
I just like how that's in bigger text. It sounds like the most dramatic thing. That it helps form Zami's final look. Having the suit and then being able to have both the zappers alongside the blunt weapon, and the blunt weapon is what you can get in and out, but the blaster is attached to the arm is already there. So yeah, that's how that works. Alright, so I can see how long the recording is, so this last video will be the end of part 1.
Tilda Chapter 6, Inside Automaton. Thanks
Inside the Automaton.
to Zami, the Automaton is cloaked, so the net robots shouldn't be able to find them.
Okay, so that's accounted for. That does get undone later on, and I think that it remains permanently undone, which explains a couple of bits and bobs later on. But yeah, not to mention, you have to be careful with how many things get counted, but if the interrupt technology is powerful, then I can see that happening and how that could have overtaken the cloaking, but it's just because, so yeah, you have one vehicle, that vehicle gets cloaked, and then the cloaking is then seen through by another type of technology, and I think that's the most okay kind of limit, but you do have to be careful because there's stories where they're like, oh, I got my vehicle cloaking while I've got an anti-cloaking device here. Oh well, I can have another device that then counters that, so I'm hidden again. So yeah, you just have to be careful. But I think I've hit the right spot here. If anything, maybe a tiny step too far. I could have just been unhidden from the start, but at the same time, wouldn't be practical, especially if it is high tech.
They have a big battle to fight after all. After some time, Nicole, Pod, and Arvin are intrigued by the ship's design. They can see that it uses the resources of a serviceman's craft, but with a couple of adjustments, and it even fires turrets of lightning instead of lasers.
Yeah, I think that's new information. Yeah.
As Zami has been caught up by Mike on what abilities each Legion member has, Nicole and Pod research what Zami
Caught up by Mike. Oh, okay, yeah. So yeah, that's good for somebody to know. Yeah. I say, what if Zami did get inspired, or if any Legion member get inspired by other abilities? Well, actually, you do get some exploration of that. Like, for instance, when Zami does get inspired by Torrent's ability, being like, oh, I want to shapeshift like that with my technology. But I feel like that should have been expanded more because, yeah, this is the fun of this universe, how to experiment with abilities.
has, being able to produce his lightning, which does interest them, but it is a shame that Zami is slightly unwise with those powers in the eyes of Nicole and Pod, who see both Zami and Arvin working at the back of the vehicle. A vehicle that was made so that if the Earth continues to fail to give him the attention Zami wants.
I feel like these lines are kind of clunky, and the way it's just hopping one thing to the next. I think one thing was slightly repeated. I guess it explains that Pod and Nicole, are keeping an eye on them. But also, at least we do get a line on why Zami did make this vehicle, especially with what happens later on. But I just felt like the writing would have been placed better. But I think what could have been better is a bit being like, "Oh, Zami, why did you make this vehicle?" And Zami could be a bit blunt about it, and then at the end he was like, "Oh, this is why I made the vehicle. It's just to get away." But yeah, I think him trying to go for another planet if this one doesn't work, yeah, I can see that happening. He could have been like looking for his race, perhaps, because he doesn't know that until later, right? But yeah, not only should he be thinking about his own race more, but I feel like it should have been more of a shock to him about book 3. So yeah, it's just a couple of missed opportunities, even if his arcs were more focused, but at the same time, they need to explore, a decent amount of layers, and why characters aren't as bothered about it, I suppose.
Then he is willing to go elsewhere, thinking his ship will fix his problems. This is another aspect that Mike did learn about.
Yeah, and instead of being a vehicle that adds more to his isolation, it's a vehicle that ends up helping the team multiple times. So yeah, it's a good repurpose.
About Zami, which is explained to the Legion, which makes the Legion curious about Zami, but Pod is mainly cynical towards Zami after earlier. Nicole wonders why Pod,
which we kind of knew, but oh well,
has a bad taste from Zami, and it's because Pod has been hindered by one figure before, another.
Okay, at least that's Pod's perspective later explained. So yeah, it's nice for Pod and Nicole to have a fairly reasonable chat. Hang on. Sorry, I thought something was happening. Anyway, so yeah, first hit of Mechajaw and even Zyphor as well. So just has these people be like, or beings, be like, oh, who are they? And so to hear these names for the first time just makes you wonder, what they're going to be like if they encounter one another. And I think I would also like to, how much Pod knows Zyphor. Like, I think he only knows tidbits, rather. Like it's explained later on, but yeah, I think that's like a reasonable amount if he has been mainly surrounded by Morphils, etc.
The Morphil like he is. Pod was led by a nasty Morphil. Mechajaw, who too was power-obsessed. Even Pod had thoughts that if Zami goes too far, he needs to be brought down before any harm comes to anyone. Nicole does.
And I feel like that should have been explored upon, because that's quite an interesting concept. Like, imagine if Zami was like a danger to others at a point where Pod that properly injures him to make sure nobody else gets hurt. I feel like that should have been, just another missed opportunity.
See where Pod is coming from, but tells him to keep an open mind. Zami is too naive to be considered a foe at this point. After asking for more about Mechajaw, Pod first.
Which is definitely a wise perspective to have. Because if Pod, despite Pod having no longer life, if it has just been ridden by No, not ridden. But if most of his life has just been about those constantly after power, then I suppose it just makes you a bit paranoid. But despite how Nicole may be far younger, but at least I think it's thanks to people like Mike who is made a bit more open-minded. So yeah.
Admits that he is led by Xionthor, a well-known evil dictator, making the universe go into fear, which shocks Nicole, especially as both Xionthor
Yeah, that's something else I've been thinking about quite a lot, is that when you have the bad guys, it just makes you wonder, are the bad guys part of an empire? Are they their own little fraction causing mischief? Are they in a other type of ruling power? Could they just be a powerful criminal going out and about? I think Cypher kind of fits in the it's its own little clan. Like there's no like overruling power, but with how powerful Xyphor is, and how much forces he has, I think that still makes the whole galaxy go into some kind of terror, because when you look at Star Wars very quickly, because the Empire is not only imposing, but they have active systems with their pros and cons, going across the galaxy. But with Xyphor, it's just literally just the fear side of things, and just being scared that either him or some other foe will just come up at any point. So that's the kind of angle I go for, and I might stick with it in the reboot.
and Mechajor go from planet to planet, really seeing how unsafe the universe is.
Xyphor's forces go from planet to planet. Not Xyphor, he just stays in the castle, so that's an accidental contradiction. I guess metaphorically, I suppose. As for Mechajor, I just feel like after the Nichibot battle, they should have, gone out in space. And actually, no, if book two, already has the president going into trouble, and then Ozona already going after them, and then afterwards, they had to save the Green Apes, and they probably had to juggle all sorts of other bits and bobs. Oh yeah, because book three does somewhat account for why Mechajor wasn't caught yet, but I don't know, Mechajor is high risk at this point. He should be prioritised, like Xyphor too as well. And maybe book three could have had these fights be like, if you try and solve this issue, this planet's fine, and this planet's fine, we'll keep finding answers for where Xyphor, etc. actually are. But they know about the whole underspace thing. And not to mention, I don't know how, I don't think the books do enough to explain how much Mechajor goes from planet to planet. It's almost as if, because Mechajor has his own, like, really strong, like, beliefs and activity, because, what Mechajor just goes for intelligent beings whilst reserving the wildlife, but Xyphor goes for anyone who could potentially be a threat to him. So we're talking about even more casualties, just going down. And I just felt like that should have been better explained or more accounted for.
It's not just Earth getting stepped on. With all these arrivals to Earth searching for energy, this is something Pod has only heard from passing conversations, trying to figure out what it means. However, this
And that right there, I think, is quite an interesting mystery.
conversation is cut short by the fact that Arvin pauses the progress of the energy-absorbing machine to see what Zami is.
I quite like this moment, because, Arvin was, like, getting on. By the way, Arvin doesn't get as tech-like after this, which is a bit of a shame, but at least it's a cool trait. But I still like this moment where he's like, "Oh, Zami, what are you up to?" And then Zami gets a bit defensive, wants to progress on his own, and then that's where Pod gets defensive as well, and then Nicole has to get them all to shut up, etc. Because she doesn't even go in between anyone, despite how potentially physical he could get. It looks like Nicole's voice is like loud and projectiles enough to make them all stop at their tracks, which so it is it does build up like more character and such.
Up to. Zami then gets defensive, moving Arvin aside forcefully, to which Pod joins this clash by defending Arvin and nearly hurting Zami again. But Nicole's voice echoes across
How?
the ship as she shouts at them all
Did he use a trident against Zami?
to stop, stopping the clash while still driving. This makes the Legion get back to their roles. Zami and Pod certainly find each other annoying, but Arvin remains forgiving and optimistic. But that curious nature.
Okay, so there are some interesting reactions then. So yeah, Arvin's not too bothered by it, thankfully, but it's just Pod taking it too far. But yeah, it's almost, Zami and Pod are almost like one of the primary mini rivalries. It's put into question a couple of times, but there's not a lot of rivalry between the two of them in book 2 and 3. If anything, Pod has like just more of a grudge against the Legion overall, but except for Arvin, of course, and he does get on with Pasnos too, who's in book 3. But yeah, Pod and Zami's rivalry kind of mainly comes up again at book 4, but that's just battling due to very irrational reasons, so it's not as personal. But yeah, once again, there could have been more opportunities to play with.
He does need to knuckle down. Even this clash finishes off as Nicole tells Zami to
Yeah, and that's more set up.
discontinue the progress towards the suit and help Arvin in.
Not to mention, after this book, Arvin being curious, he doesn't really have that curiousness again. If anything, in book 3, he does explore all sorts of thoughts, but that's not the same as being curious. So maybe what happens later on in this book just stops him from being curious again, to which, fair enough.
Instead, feeling guilty to have to work with someone whom he could have accidentally hurt. But Arvin shows that he is cool with.
Yeah, I think Sammy does manage to complete it in time, or maybe needed to like work on the suit more to fit the gadgets better. I'm not sure how that pays off later on when they get into a fight. Discontinued Breakers Fall Suit and help Harvard. Oh yeah, so him feeling guilty and yeah, because I wondered how Zami could have nearly hurt Arvin, but maybe accidentally hit him as Zami like swung about. I think that's what he would have done. Like accidentally, and but yeah, to have that sense of guilt, yeah, just goes to show that yeah, Zambi seems to be a bit more sentimental, to be like, oh yeah, fine, I'll help out with this instead, and he's dropping this cynical act, which yeah, I think this is where a nicer side of Zambi starts coming about.
Zami, which eases Zami into a new task. Arvin is more forgivable compared to the others in the Legion. So far, he only managed to add
That was slightly repeated.
the blunt arm weapons within the arms of the suit. But the lightning blasters remain separate, making him unprepared for any combat situation later. Tilda Chapter 6, Inside or for any combat situation.
Okay, yeah, I think that's just more setup as well. Oh, so it remains separate. Okay, so that's like part of a unfinished thing. Okay, so that already adds a bit of tension for later on. Okay, so yeah, this is just essentially the end of part 1. So yeah, if you're enjoying this, you do watch the next video. It is quite interesting to see what this story is like so far. Like, granted, there's a load of bits and bobs, which yeah, I can't believe I tried to get this like published. It's kind of riddled with all sorts. Even if I guess you could say, oh, it's up in the air, it's a kid's story, whatever. But no, it's meant to be a family-friendly story, and it's meant to be coherent. So yeah, I just can't believe I spotted this early now. It just goes to show how well a critical mind changes over time. Anyway, yeah, I'll see you in part 2.